Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's a beautiful Wednesday evening, and I hope you're having a lovely day. So, I thought since we had the conversation on Aburi yesterday, it might just be a lot better if we finish up with that before, moving on to another topic. All right. So that's why we're doing Decree 8. And of course, we mentioned it yesterday that yes, there was a conference at Aburi on January 4 and 5, 1967, but that conference birthed something, and what it birthed, is or was Decree number 8. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. But first, let me thank everybody for joining us. Good to have everybody here. Bumblebee, Abi, Ibo Jinodu, everyone who has liked the live. Thank you very much for getting us to 16.2k likes right here on TikTok. I really do appreciate your support. So I'm going to clap. All right. Thank you very, very much for that. Thank you. And please don't stop. I should also say that going forward, I want to see how we can get into newer territories. So I need to spend more time doing other things. And so we will have our daily sessions every day, but we might have less of, cameras and stuff, because I discovered that whenever we come on camera, we want to read all the news and then we spend so many hours, and that always affects editing. So it costs more time, so to speak. So, but yeah, today we're going to be off camera, but we're going to have a great time. Tomorrow we're going to start the new series, which is our we have to do with our incarceration, treasonable felony, and so on and so forth. That will be tomorrow. So I thought today let's finish what we started yesterday. So yesterday we listened to the recording about Aburi. I mentioned the other day that we don't do these things to try to attack anybody, but it's important for us to be knowledgeable about this stuff, so that it's not easy for people to blackmail us and manipulate us by saying things like the federal government owes them something, and you by extension, you're Nigerian, so you also owe a particular part of Nigeria something, because there was one Aburi that your people failed to do something about. That is not true. Okay, and you don't have to apologize for that, because that's not what happened. What actually happened was that our elders took the time to implement that Aburi Accord, and what they came up with is something that I personally, I don't think I can do it. And like I always say, this is another opportunity for me to say that Nigeria needs to appreciate General Gowon more. It wasn't perfect, of course, nobody is, but he considered a lot of stuff, right? But then I think it was taken for granted, and that's why what happened eventually happened. But what's all of that about? We've been talking about Decree number 8. What's in that decree? Why do we think that it should have made Nigeria better? And why do we insist that Ojukwu rejected Aburi? Before we get into the whole conversation, let me start by saying something. I was thinking about it this afternoon, and it's actually quite, it's sad, to be clear. It's quite sad that a group would, organize a coup, get Nigeria off track, and then experience the repercussion of what they did with a counter coup, and then suddenly want to opt out of the country and say, we want to get out of here. Even though a few months before Ojukwu said he was going to get out of Nigeria, Adakaburu had tried to get out of Nigeria, and he was arrested for even thinking of doing that. In other words, you can get into a space, change the order of things, scatter everywhere, and then when people begin to speak up, or you start facing the repercussions, say, I don't want to be part of your group anymore, I want to leave. It shows this, I'll call it an inability, right, to be accountable. And if you are not accountable and you don't take responsibility, you cannot grow. And when we say growth, we're not just talking about physical growth, we're talking about mental growth, we're talking about your ability to actually develop. Those things be strange to you because you can't take responsibility for anything anyway. So all of that to say that there's a pattern that you see in Nigeria's history, and like I always say, Nigeria's news is deja vu. when you understand Nigeria's history, it keeps happening. But what we want to do is to equip ourselves with information to know what happened and to ensure that even if those things, number one, those things should not happen again. But just in case people want to make it happen, make sure that you're protected so that you're not, aiding or abetting them. Number three, if it ever happens, you know how to treat the issue because you know it has happened before. And I think that's the beauty of history at the end of the day. All right, having said all that, Turenchi, let's get on to today's conversation. This recording, Decree 8 implemented Aburi. So why did Ojukwu reject it? I should also mention that there are people who don't believe these things. In the last 12 hours or so, it's not up to 12 hours since this video went up, just a few hours ago, especially on YouTube and excerpts on Facebook and Twitter. People spend more time insulting me than actually debating the details. So please, at the end of today's session, there'll be opportunity to come up if you have anything to say on the matter. But please, when you do come up, or if you do come up, try and engage intellectually. It will benefit both myself and yourself and everybody listening, right? Anybody that comes cursing in the comment section, you will be muted. I don't block people because I think you'll probably be helped by listening. So let's try and keep it respectful. But again, guys, be ready to learn. And I'm also learning here as well. So thank you very much for being here. Again, please don't stop our tapping on TikTok. Don't forget that we're not coming on camera. So that means that we have to keep power tapping. Okay?
Before we get into it, I should read some comments.
Sorry, let me read. Sorry, guys. Before we get into it, I should read some comments so that I can.
Our class tuition free.
Ibo Junado says, Prof, that's our class tuition free. Is your class tuition free to like? I don't mind that. Thank you. Still, thank you. Thank you very much. Bumblebee says, looking forward to the Owl series. Yes. We'll get started on that tomorrow. I know we don't usually come on camera. The shadow, so I'll be on camera tomorrow, Thursday. Maybe not on Friday, but I'll be there tomorrow. Oloy of South London says that we're not doing the news today. We only do the news when we come on camera. So that will be tomorrow. Try and understand. All right. Okay. So let me just check YouTube to be sure we're good, and then we can get started. How are our YouTube people? Please power tap on TikTok. Let's try and keep the numbers up. Again, remember, no camera, so that means that we have to power tap a lot so folks can see what's happening. And also the picture, my picture, so that you can, join the team. If you're a member of the team, please drop a heart to me, drop a gift. That would help us push the live to the FYP. And also subscribe on TikTok and also on YouTube. If on YouTube and Facebook, please like the live. It will really help the live stream get out there. Mr. Olatunde Odediro on YouTube, good afternoon, sir. Thank you very much for joining us. And thanks to folks on Facebook as well. It's a great delight to have you here. Kindly share this live with folks either on Twitter or on WhatsApp, whatever. Thank you very much. All right, let's get into today's conversation. I'm just going to start by reading the description and then we'll listen to the recording. Okay?
Thanks for power tapping. I see Mr. Remy.
Thanks for power tapping. I see Ola Liz B, Remy Guy. Mr. Remy. Thank you, Abby. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. God bless you. For over 60 years, the chant on Aburi we stand has echoed across the Southeast like a sacred formula. It has been repeated with conviction, taught as truth, and defended as the ultimate answer to Nigeria's troubles. That chant did not grow on its own. It was shaped by Ojukwu and sustained by a propaganda culture that framed Igbos as permanent victims whose redemption could only be found in Aburi. What many were never told is that Aburi did not remain a meeting room fantasy. The decisions reached there were translated into law through Decree 8 of March 17, 1967. That decree carried real concessions and represented General Gowon's attempt to preserve peace with the old eastern region. This video breaks down what Decree 8 actually contained, what Gowon considered in the interest of unity, why Ojukwu rejected it, and how voices from across Nigeria, the United Kingdom, and the United States reacted to both the accord and the decree that followed it. Once you understand this journey, or let me say it again, once you understand this journey fully, Aburi stops being a slogan and starts becoming history. Here is Decree 8 implemented Aburi. So why did Ojukwu reject it? I like to enjoy this, but please, as you listen, kindly part up. Let's like, let's share, and let's keep the live going. You're going to have a great time. It's about 1.5 hours long. There's another video. We may or may not listen to that much later, but this is actually very good, if I do say so myself. Okay. So this is Decree 8 implemented Aburi. So why did Ojukwu reject it? Enjoy.
Monday, we started talking about Aburi. Ojukwu and decree number 8. On Monday,
Aburi Accord, Ojukwu, and Decree number 8. On Monday, we started talking about Aburi Revisited. And we went all the way back to, the events that led to the Aburi Accord. And we are having that conversation because, I put a video out last week, and somebody went there and was chatting up about Aburi. And again, it's a shame that when people talk about Aburi, they talk about it as though they are still in 1967. Like all the things that happened, in fact, not just 67 January, February. All that has happened since March of 67 is as though they never happened. And one of the ways I know that people have never really heard of these things is because when you say these things, they curse you out, but the smart ones among them will say grok if he's on Twitter. They'll say grok, they'll grok it or whatever. And of course, after grok gives them the information, they'll not be able to say anything anymore. But the one that wants to insult you will still insult you because, that's DNA. So the point really is that a lot of us may not have heard about it before, or maybe we know, but maybe we still need to, have a refresher course, so to speak. So that's why we're doing this. So I will talk about Aburi and what led to it. Now, if you want to know what led to Aburi Accord, please go to our YouTube channel and watch Aburi Revisited. Is in the live section. You'll be able to see all of that. So I'm not going to go back to everything we've discussed so far. I'm just going to continue from where we stopped. I still have to mention some of the things we talked about anyway. So rather than start from January, I just start somewhere in September into January of 67. Rather than starting in January of 66. So we know that the coup, the counter coup, all those things, led to terrible events that happened up until August 1st, when Gowon was installed as the head of state. We said, of course, that there was a coup in January. It was an Igbo coup, January 15 of 66. There was a coup in July. It was a Northern coup, July 29 of 66. And it was basically payback for what happened in January. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's just what it is. It was payback. Now, after that happened, they had an issue choosing who was going to be the head of state. And eventually, they were going to actually break out of the country. And I think people don't appreciate that as much, but it's something that we should actually talk about some other time. All right, so this is something that we should probably talk about, because we need to appreciate the fact that the Northerners were not planning to become another Igbo or become another Irosi. They actually had that coup in order to break the country apart. That's why they called it Araba. It was about destroying the whole thing, just have a Northern Republic. But they were prevailed upon by the British High Commissioner, the American ambassador, Nigeria's AGF, people like Kashim, people in the civil service, senior civil service, especially those from the north, were able to persuade the officers, and so they abandoned the idea of seceding and decided to appoint somebody to lead Nigeria. So they appointed the man who eventually became General Gowon. Became general. So Gowon became the head of state on August 1st. August 2nd, he released Awolowo from prison. By 12th of August, he had put out the Gazette. That same month, he organized something called the Ad hoc Conference, where they brought the leaders of thought from every region. but Ojukwu made sure that his own people did not go. This was in September. All right. Around that period, of course, things that happened in July into August, terrible stuff in the north, of course, essentially payback for what happened in January, but it was still terrible regardless. People were sent back home. A lot of people had returned to the east, and they went with news of terrible things that happened to them. When their own people in the east heard about it, they attacked the northerners in the east. Now, people don't talk about it, but trust me, these things are written in books. And they didn't only do it in the east; they also did it in the Midwest, okay? But in the east, they killed northerners en masse, right? In the hundreds, okay? So things happened. Did you read it the other day? I read it in passing. I don't want to make it a topic, but I read it in passing. They kill people in Umaya, in Owerri, in Port Harcourt, in Imo, in Enugu, in Obolo. For a lot of people from the north were unalived, and that provoked another kind of reaction. So what happened was that certain people were there who were foreigners who had seen what happened in Obolo, and they got the news out, and it was reported on Radio Cotonou and other radio stations. People they received signals in Nigeria, and folks in Kaduna heard about what happened in the southeast on Radio Cotonou, and decided to translate it into English and Hausa languages, broadcast to their own people. They heard what happened to their brothers in the south, in the eastern part of Nigeria. Then they began to kill Igbos again. And that was massive, and it was a massacre. It was terrible. It was so bad that by the time the Eastern region put out a document in October of '66, they claimed that 7,000 Igbos died. At the time, Ojukwu was the governor, so it wasn't like somebody else did it. Ojukwu said 7,000 people died in October of 1966, reporting what had happened, and all of the killings, of course. Nobody really talked about what happened to the Northerners, but he talked about what happened to the Easterners because, of course, that was his own, constituency. So he put out the message, and of course, people like Gowon felt very terrible about what happened, and so when they called for the ad hoc conference, they expected to have representatives from every part, including the Eastern region, but they didn't really have anybody. But this is what Gowon said on 3rd October 1966. We're going to start from here today. It says, "Gentlemen, I will tell you this. Certainly, there has been a damage. I think that is what we never seem to admit when there is something like that. There's a damage, and I'm very, very sorry about it. I regret it, and I'm doing everything I can. As I said, for God's sake, don't lose hope. If we are alive and if we are determined, we can get this country back to its proper shape. I am determined to do that, even if it means my life. I give you my word for it. To our Eastern friends, for God's sake, please don't lose hope. Let us try and see what we can do to mend what has happened. Give me a chance, and I am quite convinced I will be able to do." 1966, and I just read Crisis and Conflict in Nigeria by H.M. Kirk Green. That was a speech by General Gowon. Excuse me. That was a speech by General Gowon.
Let me read that as well.
Well, while that was happening, there's also something that happened. Let me read that as well.
This happened in September.
Okay, that was in September. September was when the ad hoc conference was meant to start.
That tells you
Again, September 1966. The dates are very, very important. That tells you the mindset, I was going to say maniac mindset, to be honest, of certain people in this country. Now, people that kill them, terrible things that happen in the north and also in the east. By the way, folks in the north had apologized. The governor of the north apologized to the east for the people that died in the north. The federal government apologized to the east for the people that died in the north. The eastern government never apologized to anybody for all the northerners that were killed in the east, and there were many. I have a video on it on YouTube. I'm trying not to change to this topic because it's very, very emotional, the way they killed people. We hear about what happened to the Igbos, but we don't hear about what happened to others in the hands of the Igbos. And so we always have this single narrative, single story, perspective of the matter. We always say, no, somebody is a victim. It doesn't change the fact that Igbos were victims of what happened, though. I mean, it has to be acknowledged. But when you acknowledge only one side, what you're doing is to make that group the sole victim of the narrative, or in the narrative. So all the events that happen in Nigeria's history, that's the sole victim. That's a lie. They were perpetrators of terrible things in the Midwest, in the eastern region, even in parts of today's Middle Belt. Parts of Benue and Kogi State, the Igbos got there, did terrible things. For the Northerners living in the, you know what? I've said this thing. I said it last time. I'm saying it again, but I've never read it. I've not read it so far. Do you mind if I read this thing? It's actually quite important. I'm trying to gloss over it, but I don't think it's going to help. You can't appreciate it until you've heard it. And again, like I always say, and it's important to repeat it, this is not to say some people are bad. It's just that you are not a saint. I mean, I'm not going to say you did something I did not do just to be able to claim that, whatever. But it's important that we don't have this terrible thing where we just act like one group is, nothing happened to them. I won't even read everything. Should I read? Let's start with Enugu. Very quickly. In Enugu, the attack on Northerners started on the 15th of August. Igbo soldiers led the attack. About 630 Northerners were killed in the province, while 27 were seriously wounded. A Northern boy, 7 years old, was publicly slaughtered in the street by uniformed Igbo. I'll take that slowly. A Northern boy, 7 years old, was publicly slaughtered in the street by uniformed Igbo soldiers in the presence of another Northerner who dressed like an Igbo and was thus able to escape detection. In Onitsha province, 30 Northerners were killed and 6 seriously injured. In Owerri too, where Northerners had lived for long and intermarried with the Igbos, they were attacked and killed in cold blood, despite assurances from the Igbo elders. One Northerner, by the Igbo elders in quote, one Northerner who escaped from Owerri was Alhaji Sabo, who was born there, his father having settled there 70 years ago. His father, chief of the Hausa community in Owerri, had been a customary court judge there for 37 years. He was killed at the beginning of the organized attack on Northerners in the presence of the son, who later managed to escape to Kaduna. All of that happened in August. In September, a very large number of those Northerners who had managed to reach Oboloafo on their way to the north were murdered. This atrocity was witnessed by some foreigners on the Ojukwu-Onitsha road on their way to western Nigeria. And these eyewitnesses are believed to be one of the sources of information for the foreign broadcast of the atrocities. In Port Harcourt, a house with a large number of Northern women in hiding was attacked. The women were raped and beaten to death. Igbo singing war songs slaughtered every Northerner they could find in the street, and a number of those who were in hiding were killed quietly by their neighbors. During the evacuation, a train driven by an expectorate carrying about 2,000 Northerners from Port Harcourt was stopped at Imo River by Igbo soldiers. Suddenly, Igbos armed with deadly weapons rushed out from the bush and attacked the passengers. Every adult male Northerner on the train was killed and the body thrown into the river, while children and the young women were captured and taken into slavery. The few survivors were eventually admitted into Otukpo and Makodi hospitals. I'll just read only this part. If you read Sunset in Biafra, you will see what happened to others in Port Harcourt, the hands of Igbos. Again, you know what happened to Igbos in the north. It goes without saying, it was terrible. But you see, once you don't put things in proper perspective, you will be easily blackmailed with sub-stories. Again, show compassion, but don't be naive, right? Something happened to people. In fact, let's just quickly go through it. Leaders of other people were killed by Igbos. Leaders, military leaders, political leaders, in different parts of Nigeria, but not in Igbo land, but killed everybody. Those ones now retaliated in July. Bad, but it is what it is. They retaliated. Folks then went back to the east, so they killed a lot of Easterners, over 200. Well over 200 people were killed in July 29th into beginning of August. Those people go back home, they tell their own story. The people now caught Hausas or Northerners generally and started killing them. The news now traveled all the way back to the north, and then those ones began to kill Igbos as well. So you see, it's back and forth, back and forth. It doesn't make it right, but it makes it easier for you to understand what really happens. So you don't go around, getting carried away by people who just want to run, an agenda, essentially. Anyway, while all that was happening, like I said, Gowon became head of state on August 1st. Second, he released our law. Later in August, was going to have a meeting. But here's what happened. Ojukwu, instead of sending a delegation from... instead of sending delegation to Lagos, he decided to send... Excuse me, I'm reading something on YouTube. Thank you very much for that comment. Instead of sending delegation to Lagos, he decided to send people to go bomb parts of Lagos. I mean, a particular place in Lagos and also another place in Ore. This was not during the war. This was September of 66. We don't talk about it enough, but it's very, very important that we do. Towards the end of September 1966, Constitutional Conference, which Major General Gowon had set up, had made good progress. Let me go back just a bit. On his assumption of office, Major General Gowon set in motion the machinery for finding a lasting solution to Nigeria's problems. He ordered the release of Chief Obafemi Awolowo, who was leader of the opposition in the federal parliament until his imprisonment in 1963, Chief Anthony Nauru and other political prisoners and detainees. B, the immediate return to the federal system of government. C, the summoning on 12 September 1966 of an ad hoc conference on constitutional proposals comprising representatives of all the regions of the federation. This conference was preceded by consultative conferences in all areas in the regions. At these consultative conferences, the issue of the creation of more states in the federation was revived, and memoranda were submitted demanding that the basic cause of dissatisfaction, i.e. the imbalance in the federal structure, should be removed. Please power tap on TikTok, thank you. Major General Gowon also announced that the country would return to civilian rule as soon as it could be arranged. The Constitutional Conference already referred to was preceded by terrorist bomb outrages in Lagos and at the Ore Bridge on the trunk road from Lagos to the east, organized by Ojukwu's administration. So way back in September 66, Ojukwu was bombing places in Ore and in Lagos. Where did he bomb in Lagos? It's called Federal Palace Hotel. That was the venue of the conference, and Ojukwu, instead of sending the people to come for the meeting, decided to just come and blow up the place. Just very retarded move, to be honest. Anyway, that happened, and several times they, made overtures to get him to attend these meetings. Even he, with the other military governors, he said no, he didn't attend. So what happened was that different conciliation committees went to Enugu, right? So there was a time when kings, Yoruba Obas, and chiefs went to talk to him, right, to try to persuade him. There was no war at this time. This was still 66. Just trying to tell him, guy, you guys should have your meetings, talk about it. They couldn't really do much. And then, of course, much later, I'm trying to jump some things. Much later, you had the meeting with Awo and Marere. That was in May 6 and 7 of 67, so I don't want to go very far. Anyway, later on, the British High Commissioner, American Ambassador, and so on and so forth, they tried to also persuade him. Eventually, they were able to get General Ankara in Ghana to hold a conference at Aburi, which is what this conversation is really about. So they went to Aburi, and when they got there, Ojukwu went there for business. And we said it the other time that, to be honest, as far as that event was concerned, Ojukwu was the best prepared person, right? It didn't bother with handshakes and with embraces. Only could just make do with handshakes and all that, according to Enyo Akman's book, The Struggle for Secession. So when they got there, they talked about what they were going to agree to, and then they came up with their stuff. I don't go back into all the details. Eventually, January 6 and 7. By the way, I didn't. There's something I omitted. Ojukwu had published that 7,000 people died in in the north. 7,000 Igbo people died in the north. He said that October 1966. By January, when they went to Aburi, he said there were 10,000. Right. Much later in May, he said there were 30,000. By 1969, he said the number was 50,000. Not that more people were dying, or just that particular event. And it's the kind of numbers that you hear people throw around these days. Oh, 30,000 people died, 50,000 people died. Because they know you're not going to ask that question. You're just going to feel sorry because, that many numbers. That's why John the St. George said he played an irresponsible numbers game. He was just lying. Okay. It was terrible what happened, but I think it was worse with the lies. It was just unnecessary. Anyway, they went to Aburi, had the meeting, returned to Nigeria, and excuse me, I'd like to go to N. Akpan's book.
Our introduction was not so long today, thank God.
So we're in Aburi now, finally. Okay.
1 second.
Our introduction was not so long today, thank God.
For the meeting, they had.
All right, so they went for the meeting. They had, two books I'll be reading. The Struggle for Secession is the Eastern Angle from N.U. Akpan, and then Go On, the Biography of a Soldier Statesman, is the Northern Angle from J. Isawa Elaigo. So, but they decided what they were going to do, and they, they agreed to what they were going to do in Aburi.
So they agreed to what they were going to do, talked about the fact that they're going to have an SMC instead of having a Supreme
All right. So they agreed to what they were going to do, talked about the fact that they're going to have an SMC instead of having a Supreme Commander. And I said the other day that I think what Gowon actually considered was a lot, and it should be respected and celebrated for the things that he did. I think it was too generous, to be honest. And I think that actually affected everything, because when you want to do stuff, don't just do things because of God. You also have to understand what has happened. I wish Gowon had read Laws of Power before he did what he did, or at least he had advisors who were much older and who were not soldiers. Assuming that Nigeria was something, he should have talked to people who actually understood stuff. Anyway, what under the bridge? He considered a lot of stuff, and it was so bad that Ojukwu had to ask his guy, N.U. Akpan, why were those people so jubilant? Do you think they have grasped the full implication of the decisions they have taken? And N.U. Akpan says, I do not think they had, and I told the governor so. And he smiled with satisfaction and asked his ATC to bring out a bottle of champagne. I must have spoiled the fun and made him wonder. When in the midst of the drinking, I said, Your Excellency, I am honestly worried by it all. Anyway, the point is, by the way, we're reading N.U. Akpan's book because N.U. Akpan was the Secretary to the Government of the Eastern Region. So that happened. I'm trying to remember where we stopped though. So they returned to Nigeria, and Ojukwu was the first person to break the agreement. Why? As a matter of fact, they started breaking the agreement before the Aburi meeting itself. For instance, they were not supposed to go with any advice, as Ojukwu went with 9. Okay? And when they advised Gowon not to do it, since Ojukwu had already, scattered everything, Gowon said, no, it's okay, they're going to have the meeting regardless. Anyway, they returned to Nigeria, and contrary to the agreement that Gowon should be the first person to announce what happened at Aburi, Ojukwu went ahead to announce everything, again, tilting it in a different way. Let me read to you from N.U. Akpan. When they returned to Nigeria, right, he called the person like his mentor, said to him, but you have not brought us full independence on sovereignty. That was the reply that Ojukwu received. So in other words, before he went there, they wanted Nigeria to break, originally. And by the way, that's not the first time. They already planned to break Nigeria in 1963 anyway, but let's continue here. The governor drove me to the State House accompanied by those who had come to receive him at the airport. We're just going to jump very quickly to... Good. Contrary to the understanding reached in Aburi, namely that the first statement on the outcome of Aburi should come from Lagos. Sorry, go back just a bit. Okay, it says, The governor was surprised and peeved that they said, but you have not brought us full independence. He was surprised and peeved. He drove home to the State House accompanied by those who had come to receive him at the airport. There, he briefed them fully on the decisions taken, after which he was probably advised to inform the public, contrary to the understanding reached in Aburi, namely that the first statement of the outcome of the Aburi should come from Lagos. Thus, soon after our arrival back home, the governor called a press conference because, quote-unquote, it has come to my notice that the public is anxious to have more details of decisions taken. And his hurry to make the statement was caused by the, quote-unquote, misgivings which I understand are prevalent in the region as a result of this meeting. He went on, I recall that, so he just went ahead to tell them everything, even if some of those things he was saying was just based on what he thought, the things were supposed to be. And then he went on to, release gramophone records and put things on radio, their conversations, he put it out there. Everybody was supposed to know exactly what happened. So essentially, he had boxed Gowon in a corner. He also said that, they should, since they go back around 7th of January, they should have another meeting on the 14th of January, and he wanted to have a decree that would have everything in Aburi by the 21st of January. Okay, which was crazy because that was just like 2 weeks. Anyway, that didn't happen according to their plan, but they kept having meetings. So I'm just going to jump some pages. I don't want to go back to everything we discussed the other day. I'm just going to jump, but still in the book by N.U. Akpan, The Struggle for Secession. Okay, good. Although the law officers met as scheduled, the decree was not promulgated by January 21st, 1967. Before then, Colonel Ojukwu had been importuning the head of the military government to honor the deadline, but as we have seen, others were now having second thoughts. Why? Because of the way Ojukwu was also acting, okay? And also because by the time Gowon got back, we were like, wait, you have considered a lot already, like it's too much. Anyway, let's continue. But as we have seen, others were now having second thoughts. Later, a draft decree came from the federal government, but was clearly out of tune with the Aburi recommendations. The East naturally could not accept it. Tension heightened. Arguments and even quarrels broke out and worsened when on January 15th, the federal government launched a vicious pamphlet in answer to several which had been published by the East. The federal pamphlet was entitled Nigeria 66. Colonel Ojukwu claimed that in the true spirit of Aburi, Colonel Gowon had told him in advance about the publication and he had persuaded Colonel Gowon to agree to suspend it. In other words, Ojukwu had about a week of spreading propaganda, releasing records, publishing stuff. Gowon was going to, without telling Gowon what he was doing, just rubbishing everybody. And then Gowon was going to respond, and even Gowon still reached out to Ojukwu and said, I'm going to send this thing out. I will not do that, by the way. Just saying. You're supposed to treat people the way they are, not the way you expect them to be. Because certain people, how do you say that in Yoruba, in English? If a person is used to sleeping on the floor, put them on the mat, on the bed, on the mattress, they'll find a way to get back on the floor because that's what they're used to. All right, let's go on. On February 17th to 18th, I'm still reading N.U. Akpan's book. Secretaries of the military government, accompanied by legal and financial advisors, met in Benin to advise on how the Aburi decisions should be implemented. They had up till now been pressures on the federal government by those who read the writing on the wall to do something about carrying out the Aburi decisions in order to keep the country together. At that meeting, I impressed upon my colleagues the need to implement the decisions in order to enhance the image and good name of the country. No matter what personal reservations one might have about the actual decisions, the fact remained they were agreements freely entered into by those in whose hands lay the destiny of the country. I criticized my colleagues in the federal government by trying to change policy decisions duly taken by the highest authority in the land, the Supreme Military Council. As civil servants, our duty was to carry out decisions of government, although we had also the right, indeed the duty, to analyze and spotlight the effects of such decisions. The outcome of that meeting was Decree number 8, which, in my view, faithfully implemented the Aburi decisions. Who is speaking here? N.U. Akpan. Who is N.U. Akpan? The Secretary to the government of the Eastern region. He's saying here, in his view, that Decree number 8 faithfully implemented the Aburi decisions. If it faithfully implemented the Aburi decisions, how come nobody talks about Decree 8? They just shout Aburi, Aburi, Aburi all over the place. Let me read something to you from J. Sawelaigo.
It was a moment of this. It was prepared to compromise everything but the experiment of Nigerians living apart. It was a moment of
this. It was prepared to compromise everything but the experiment of Nigerians living apart and later on deciding whether it was possible to come back again. It was in this moment of tough decision making at Benin that one of the civil servants, the then Secretary of Western State Government, offered him advice Gowon would never forget. When things were really rough, that's Gowon speaking. Excuse me.
Thank you for writing the title of the book in the comment section. Thank you. So this is Gowon speaking.
Yemonites, thank you for writing the title of the book in the comment section. Thank you. So this is Gowon speaking. When things were really rough, I remembered him coming to say to me, sir, whatever it is, no matter how bad it may look, no matter how difficult the decision might be, if you have decided on that issue, approve it. Since you are sincere and the other side is not, they might do something which would then allow you to take further action. But no one would accuse you of going back on your words. I remember that very distinctly. It was Peter Odumosu who gave him that advice. So Gowon and his colleagues, excluding Ojukwu, approved the draft decree implementing Aburi. On 17th March 1967, it came into effect as Decree number 8, 1967. What's in this decree? According to this decree, Nigeria became more confederal than it had ever been. By its terms, a decree which was the sole prerogative of the federal military government could only come into effect with the consensus of all the military governors. Let me quickly say something. I don't think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it happened before Gowon and even after Gowon that the military head of state will require the governors to confer on a matter and vote on it before he makes a decision. I don't think that's how they did it. But that's what Gowon was trying to do. He was trying to do something. And we're going to get into the details of Decree number 8 today. We're going to get into it today. They're creating a situation where everybody, all the regions would have a say in the matter. So you don't have a supreme commander like Ironsi. Ironsi was supreme commander. You don't have a supreme commander. What you have is you have a head of state, but you have a supreme military council. All right, and based on what they came out with on March 17, it would have made Nigeria better than it was under civilian rule. Because the system we had under civilian rule was not even, the autonomy that this one would have given would have been more than what the regions had before Ironsi. But let's go on reading. So again, I'm reading Gowon, the biography of a soldier statesman by J. Isawa Elaigo. He says, according to this decree, that's Decree 8, Nigeria became more confederal than it had ever been. By its terms, a decree which was the sole prerogative of the federal military government could only come into effect with the consensus of all the military governors. Both legislative and executive powers of the government of the federation were vested in the Supreme Military Council. So it was the parliament, it was the executive, they decided things together. The Federal Executive Council was to discharge only those functions which were specially delegated to it by the Supreme Military Council. So in other words, the cabinet will only do what the SMC says they should do. The SMC was a legislature, the SMC was an executive. Okay, so that means that all the governors of all regions, including Ojukwu, will be part of that SMC. So Gowon could not just decide what they wanted to do and say, I put out a decree, which is quite interesting. For the first time, the concurrence of the head of state and of all the regional governors was made essential with respect to certain matters in Section 69B of the Constitution, i.e., trade, commerce, industry, transport, the armed forces, the Nigerian police, and higher education. The above provisions made the federal government highly dependent on regional governments. The federal government's action on any of the listed items could easily have been paralyzed by the objection of any two of the regional governors. This was basically a confederal arrangement in which the general government is dependent upon the regional government. What's it saying here? 1967, at least at this point in March, we had 4 regional governments. Northern, Eastern, Western, Midwestern. We had 4. And then you had the head of state. So in order to do anything that has to do with transport, armed forces, Nigerian police, trade, commerce, higher education, in order to do anything that has to do with all those things, they are going to have to vote. And if 2 of the regional governors say no, that means that that particular thing will not sail through. In other words, the federal military government is dependent on the regional government in order to make decisions. That's quite cool, isn't it? I'm not sure I like it, but it would have been really cool. So what that means basically is, even by the time you transition, you go back to civilian government, you see that situation where the regions still have a lot of autonomy, and you couldn't just tell them what to do because you're Oga in the federal government. So the center will be a bit weaker. Essentially, it will be weaker than Iransi. Any sane person would jump at this.
Let's go on. The federal government's action on any
Let's continue. Given the circumstances at the time, let's go on. The federal government's action on any of the listed items could easily have been paralyzed by the objection of any 2 of the regional governors. So if Ojukwu says no, and let's say David Ejo says no, that means nothing's going to happen. You get the point. If Hassan, the government did not say no, like any 2 of them could just say no, that means that thing's not going to sail through. That still gives you power, right? Your chief justice, everything in your state, you will appoint that one yourself. When it comes to Supreme Court, the head of state will not be the only one to appoint the Supreme Court judges. It will still need you to appoint them.
Not much can be done, even though you are the governor.
So what you are saying basically is that without you, not much can be done, even though you are the governor. You know, if we had this, nobody will be shouting, I want to break Nigeria. But the person who won't break Nigeria before still not like this kind of thing. Because you get waiting you won't do for your own mind. So I'm going to read that again. I'm trying to get into the details of Decree 8. We just said Decree 8. What is it? What is in Decree 8? What's it about? And why do we say it makes sense? Let's continue reading.
Yes.
Ade said on TikTok, some people will vote against Coastal Road in that type of arrangement. Yes.
This is why we need to do this now.
See, what it means basically is that you have to make your case. This is why we need to do this now. This is why we need to do that. Me, like I said, I don't like it. I like a federal system. I don't like confederal system. A federal system makes sense. I'm not even trying to, don't come and decide anything. But again, when it comes to that kind of coastal road, if you want to do it in your own region, you can do it. Thing, you have to now decide on that matter. But actually, infrastructure like that did not come under this kind of thing, by the way. So it's not like, they don't have to vote on things like this. When it comes to infrastructure, the federal government can do it without having to vote on it. It's not every decision that the federal government wants to make that requires voting. I already read the specific things: armed forces, the army, Nigerian police, higher education, like federal universities, industry, transport, not infrastructure. So things like that, they would not have led anybody to vote. But even then, where you need to vote, all you have to do is to make your case. But I think the real thing is the fact that the head of state would not have had as much power as is expected to have in a military arrangement. You get the point? So I think that for me is actually quite it's very great. It's the head of state being very, very gracious. Still being very, very gracious. So what would have had is, and it makes sense. So if you really think about it, don't worry. Let me not preempt.
Okay, we're good now.
We'll get into what makes it better. Let's get back into this. Okay, we're good now. So he says here, moreover, each while those of the Supreme Court were to be appointed by the Supreme Military Council, most of the powers given to the head of the federal military government by Decree number 1 of 1966 became, please pay attention. Most of the powers given to the head of the federal military government by Decree number 1 of 1966 became vested not in the head of state Gowon, but in the Supreme Military Council, in which regional military governors now had veto powers. Whereas under the above decree, the SMC was only to advise the head of the federal military government. Now he's had most of the powers, and the head of state was a mere chairman.
Ironsi gave us decree number 1. That centralized power, not just in government, but in himself.
Ironsi gave us decree number 1.
SMC, but he only advised
That centralized power, not just in government, but in himself. He had an SMC, but they only advised him, and he could decide not to work with them or work with their advice. Gowon gave us a decree that takes the power away from him and has that power given to the Supreme Military Council, they're not just going to be there to advise him, but they have veto power. Ojukwu said no.
So I just mean the chairman.
We'll read more.
You know what I just remember right now?
So I just mean the chairman of. You know what I just remember right now?
They had the Confederacy.
Anybody? You know what I just remember right now? I just remembered Ile-Ife before the draw. They had the Confederacy as well. Quite interesting. History is. I mean, this life is a cycle, isn't it? Let's go on. All appointments to super scale group and above in federal public service and posts of deputy commissioners of police and above in the Nigerian police force were to be made by the Supreme Military Council. The Supreme Military Council was also to make appointments of ambassadors and high commissioners as well as principal representatives to other countries.
There was no National Assembly.
Okay? Remember, there was no parliament. There is no National Assembly. So those 5 people, the governors of the 4 regions and the head of state, they are the National Assembly, they are the presidency, they are everything. So you know how when we're going to have, I mean, this last round of ambassadors list that was sent to the National Assembly from the president to the National Assembly were to be from them, to those 5 people to decide who will be the diplomat, the ambassador to the United States, who will be this people. That's a lot of power.
The Supreme Military Council was also to make appointments.
That's a lot of power.
Commissioners as well as principal representatives to other countries.
The Supreme Military Council was also to make appointments of ambassadors and high commissioners as well as principal representatives to other countries. Certainly, if Nigeria was still a federation under this decree, it must have been a very weak federation. It was virtually a confederate system, or a confederate structure, which went very far to meet the demands of Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu, even if it did not mean the implementation of Aburi in absolute terms. Ojukwu got from this decree what he had failed to get at the ad hoc constitutional conference. As Ojukwu's chief secretary admitted, the decree number 8, quote, in my view, faithfully implemented the Aburi decisions, end of quote. We read that from his book, The Struggle for Secession by Ẹkáàbọ.
It was therefore an understatement when in reference to this decree, Lieutenant Colonel Gowon said,
It was therefore an understatement when in reference to this decree, Lieutenant Colonel Gowon said, the said decree number 8 in effect restored the powers of the regional governments to the constitutional position before January 17, 1966. It was more correct when he told the listening diplomats. This is what he said originally was that, okay, we're going to go back to what we were before January 17, 1966. But in actual fact, what he was giving was better than what Ironsi met there. So this is what they told the diplomats. In fact, the decree went further. This is Gowon speaking. The decree went further than mere restoration and for the first time included regional governors as members of the federal executive. Thus, you will see that the position of regional government has actually been considerably strengthened. This decree also established area command in the effort to re-establish confidence within the army and maintain discipline in order to ensure the continuation of the Nigerian army under a unified command. In other words, you still have area command of the army. And you that are the governor of that region, you can still direct what's going to happen to those people. Okay, let's go on.
In fact, the decree went further than mere restoration and for the first time included...
Let me go back to what Gowon said. In fact, the decree went further than mere restoration and for the first time included regional governors as members of the federal executive. Thus, you will see that the position of regional governments has actually been considerably strengthened. This decree also established area command in the effort to reestablish confidence within the army and maintain discipline in order to ensure the continuation of the Nigerian army under unified command. It was in consonance with this spirit that the title of the high office, which I have the honor to hold, was changed from the Supreme Commander to the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. The central government of Nigeria became far weaker than the regions. The provision that decrees could only be issued with consensus of all military governors, while the military governors continued to make edicts in their regions with a high degree of autonomy, meant greater weakness of the central government in its relationship with the regions. What is this saying here? What he's saying basically is this: you are the governor of the East. You can create edicts in your region. You have autonomy. But even at the central level, we can't make certain decrees, major decrees, without your input. So which means that you can do things without the government, without the federal government, but the federal government cannot do things without you, for the most part. Someone in the comment section says, worse democracy is still better than the best dictatorship. But this is not a dictatorship, that's the point. This wasn't going to be a dictatorship.
A dictator will not do... Have you ever seen any dictator in this world? If you know anyone, please let me know.
A dictator will not do... Have you ever seen any dictator in this world? If you know anyone, please let me know. A dictator who has a confederal system.
That's why I said...
Who grants autonomy to the regions. That's why I said... This man did not behave like a military man when he was conceding all these things.
I don't think Nigeria actually...
I don't know any military man that would do that. I don't think Nigeria...
Let's go on. The central government of Nigeria...
Thank you very much on YouTube. Thank you. Let's go on. The central government of Nigeria became far weaker than the regions. The provision that decrees could only be issued with the consensus of all military governors, while the military governors continued to make edicts in their regions with a high degree of autonomy, meant greater weakness of the central government in its relationship with the regions. So Gowon, in his 30 November 1966 broadcast, rejected confederalism by the terms of the decree. Confederalism could not have been more fully accepted. Excuse me. Hence, edicts were made in the eastern region for the takeover of federal government corporations, such as the airways, railways, shipping, ports, telecommunications, electricity, and coal corporations. That's what Ojukwu did. As Gowon had occasion to complain, there is no doubt that these so-called edicts are contrary to the laws and constitution of Nigeria. Consequently, they have no validity. In other words, you can't just greater powers. I don't know how to explain this thing. It's just no. I know how to explain this thing. I'm trying to find a way to break it down. I know what to say. So here's the thing. Ojukwu was about power, not about cooperation. He didn't care about cooperating with anybody. What he was doing was to take over everything that the federal government had done in his region and say, now it belongs to me and I'm the guy of this place. I don't care what you are doing in Lagos. If an Igbo man studies what I'm saying right now, listens to me very closely, this might actually heal your entire life. I mean, your generation might heal you. Imagine for a second, Ojukwu said yes to this. Because everybody else said yes. The North said yes, the West said yes, the Midwest said yes, only the East said no. Let's read a few more things. It's just sad. Then he goes around shouting, Aburi we stand. Aburi that has 3 legs, but two don't break. Now only one. You could just fall, your teeth go come out. Where were we? So, Eastern region was making edicts for the takeover of the federal government corporations. The thing we federal government get for your region, you can't take and say, now you own them. Not you build them, They'll say, "Are you owner?" because you get power. But whereas to go on, the edicts in the East had no validity to Ojukwu. They were very valid. Ojukwu had rejected decree number 8. The centrifugal pull had gone to the extent that federal authority was no longer binding on the Eastern region in practical terms. If the decree was politically expedient for short-term purposes, it was politically myopic for long-term purposes. If only Ojukwu had accepted the decree and made political capital out of it, Nigeria would have been at the very best by now a de facto confederal country, short of secession. With the benefit of hindsight, Nigeria was probably lucky that Ojukwu rejected the decree despite its embedded advantages for him.
If Ojukwu had accepted that decree, Nigeria would have been a de facto confederal country at the very best.
If Ojukwu had accepted that decree, Nigeria would have been a de facto confederal country at the very best. The only difference between what Ojukwu wanted and what Gowon gave was secession. Guys, that was the only thing Gowon did not give.
For instance, number one, I don't know any normal military guy.
I don't know any sane person, a military person, for instance. Number one, I don't know any normal military guy that would do confederation like Gowon. So he's even in a class of his own. I don't know anyone that will say, okay, now that I'm the head of state, to come and break this country and go your separate ways because I want to give you everything you want. So the only thing that Gowon did not, that Ojukwu did not get from the agreement, the only thing, I'm going to see when we get to the United States involved in the drafting of this decree and was in a position to have had first-hand knowledge of what was going on, claimed that Ojukwu and his young Igbo lawyers who had much influence over him had made up their minds not to accept the decree. It's in this book, The Struggle for Secession. We'll read this when we get there, but we're already reading it here anyway, so let's go on. He claimed that the Igbo lawyers who had been actively involved in the drafting of the decree at Benin returned to Enugu only to recommend its rejection by Ojukwu. Akpan's recommendation as the chief secretary that the draft decree number 8 had given the Eastern region most of its demands and therefore should be accepted was rejected by Ojukwu. Let me read something to you from Akpan for a second. Why people wicked? Why? You will hurt your people and the coming generations, then you will lie to them that somebody else did it. And while you are alive, they'll be cursing that person and you'll be happy. And now that you are dead, they are still cursing those people, not knowing that you are the one who actually destroyed their lives. If Ojukwu had accepted this is 66, 67, there will be no an IPOB. Guys, lesson for all of us. May God give us wisdom and understanding. When you are doing things, please remember tomorrow. It's not about ego. This is a shame. This is painful. You know, I said there's something you read in Nigeria, you just be angry. Just be angry. Like, who does this? GDX will say, wait, it does this, but you get the point. Like, who does this? Let me read to you what the chief secretary said. That's Enyapa. He says the draft decree had gone to the governor first, and he had handed it to the legal experts, in quote, to examine. I saw a copy later, but in time for me to study and make counter comments on the legal experts' comments. In other words, the legal experts made a comment on the decree, on the draft decree. He is now making his own comment on the comments of the legal experts. So he says here, I saw a copy later, but in time for me to study and make counter comments on legal experts' comments, a copy of which had been sent to me. I do not have a copy of the legal experts' comments with me, but my own counter remarks may give an idea what they said, which eventually led to the rejection of that decree by the Eastern Nigerian military government. So we're trying to answer the question that J. Sawelago asked in his book. So he's writing this to Ojukwu. He says, Your Excellency, Lagos has now submitted a draft decree for the implementation of the Aburi agreement. It is now for Your Excellency to decide, taking all the implications into account, whether to concur with the publication of the decree or not. In order for this to be done objectively, I suggest the draft decree be studied against the background of the Aburi decisions. Those decisions broadly involve the following. Number one, the restoration of the powers of the regional governments which had been suppressed or depressed by decree number 1 following the army takeover in 1966. Number 2, the vesting in the Supreme Military Council all the powers which used to belong to the federal government prior to January 16th, with the proviso that any decision of the Supreme Military Council which affected the whole country must receive the concurrence of the military governors. In other words, insofar as those matters were concerned, the military governors had the powers of veto. We already explained all of those things. When it came to the powers of the government, it wasn't just the head of state being a dictator, it was the SMC deciding what Nigeria had to do per time as far as decrees were concerned. So that meant that you had a lot of power as a governor, even though you're not the head of state. The head of state is just the chairman of your committee, like Oranfe or Batala. Number 3, the vesting in the Supreme Military Council of all powers of appointment into certain categories of posts in the Federal Public Service, namely A, diplomatic and consular posts, B, senior posts in the armed forces, C, senior posts in the police, D, super scale posts in the Federal Civil Service, E, super scale posts in the Federal corporations. In other words, if you want to make somebody permanent secretary, a federal kini or director, the head of state cannot just make that decision. You have to make it together. Number 4, apart from restriction of powers, the vesting of all the powers in the Supreme Military Council, power to appoint those people we mentioned earlier. Number 4, the reorganization of the army. Number 5, the resettlement of displaced persons. Now it goes on. The power to make the appointments at A, C, and D imply that the Federal Public Service Commission and the Police Service Commission were reduced to advisory capacities. Insofar as these appointments were concerned, at the moment, they have executive powers in respect of these appointments. What is he saying here? He's saying here that up until this moment, the Police Service Commission and Federal Public Service Commission are the ones that decide what happens as far as appointments and promotions were concerned. But he's saying now that based on what this decree that they're just bringing out, this is decree number 8, it'd be like, say, Police Service Commission cannot just appoint IG. They can only advise the SMC, the Supreme Military Council, on who to appoint as Inspector General of Police. In other words, the Police Service Commission has moved from the executive role to advisory role. So the executive powers now in the SMC. The Federal Public Service Commission will not just be able to do that anymore. It now has to be the decision of the SMC. So we can start saying things like, we don't want that kind of person to become Director General of choose any parastatal. And the Federal Public Service Commission cannot decide anymore. They can only advise the SMC on who to put there. You see how powerful that SMC was? You have to be a demon or you are specially possessed to reject this thing alone, considering the fact that it was military. If they give you Nigeria today, if they give you this kind of decree, this kind of law today, would you not jump at it?
It says the power to make the appointments imply that the Federal Public Service Commission
Let's go on.
and the Police Service Commission were reduced.
It says the power to make the appointments imply that the Federal Public Service Commission and the Police Service Commission were reduced to advisory capacities insofar as these appointments were concerned. At the moment, they have executive powers in respect of these appointments. Number 3, for the purpose of the present decree, the following decisions of Aburi meeting are not relevant. A, appointment to super-scale posts in the federal corporations. This will require the amendment of the different laws which establish these corporations. B, the reorganization of the army. This must depend on whether recommendations the military experts. This must depend on whatever recommendations the military experts who were to meet will make, leading to the amendment of the Army Act as will be decided by the Supreme Military Council. Number C, the resettlement of displaced persons. This will involve the whole question of fiscal arrangements or formula for the allocation of revenue, which were to be determined by the financial experts of the various governments. Number 4, having said this, it is for us to see whether those decisions which can be implemented by the present draft decree have in fact been implemented. He's saying here that the first part of these things, this decree has already implemented it. The other part that has to do with appointment and everything is something that folks will have to sit on and decide. So for instance, not to organize the army has to sit on it, and then they will send recommendations to the SMC. In other words, what I'm saying basically is that all these things that are not taken care of right now are the things that this decree creates a framework for, right? And so it says, having said all the things I've said though, it is for us to decide whether those decisions which can be implemented by the present draft decree have in fact been implemented. Please pay attention. It may sound a bit, a lot of Turenchi, but please pay attention. This is Nigerian history.
We ready? Good. My close study of the draft decree with the
We ready? Good. My close study of the draft decree with the eyes of a layman, as carefully compared with the Aburi decisions, show that they have in fact been implemented. The Chief Secretary of the Eastern Region is saying that when he compared the draft decree number 8 with the Aburi recommendations, he says everything has been implemented. The position and powers which have been detracted from the regions by decree number 1, which Ironsi brought, by the way, it wasn't even Gowon that brought decree number 1. It was the same Ironsi, and Ojukwu wasn't on it. He wasn't on it. We'll talk about that some other time. Ojukwu was in on it. Gowon didn't even make these decrees without Ojukwu. How about that? The decree that abolished regional, I'm leaving the topic for a second. The decree that abolished regional system in this country that Gowon pushed was not done without Ojukwu. I'm saying before it was promulgated, Ojukwu was part of the whole show. Read the book by Nebogram Douglas. Early May 66, Ojukwu was asking Nebogram Douglas to draft a decree, a unity decree for Nigeria. Why did he talk to him? Because he was his Attorney General, and he was against the idea. It's in his book. That book was published in 1968, Ojukwu's Rebellion and World Opinion. You'll find it for free on our Telegram channel, Radio Me Global. He was asking him to draft the decree for unitary system. By May 24, that decree was promulgated. All the rubbish thing that Ironsi did, Gowon did not do it. Gowon is reversing it. You are still saying no, but you're part of the people that even destroyed it in the first place. Somebody says on TikTok, those whom God want to, It says those whom the gods want to destroy, he first makes mad. Ojukwu was made mad. I guess so. Thank you, MD on YouTube, and thank you, Mr. Bankole Gani. Thanks a lot. This thing is painful. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. You study some things, you're just angry. Some people are just possessed with demons. It has to be legion, to be honest. I'll come back to this book. Let's finish this one. So NUR is saying here, my close study of the draft decree with the eyes of a layman, as carefully compared with the Aburi decisions, show that they have in fact been implemented. The position and powers which had been detracted from the regions by decree number 1 have been restored. Executive and legislative powers of the federal government have been vested in the Supreme Military Council with the proviso as stipulated at Aburi. What is he saying here? I said it before, I will say it again. He's saying that the executive arm of government, we have 3 arms, Abi: executive, legislature, and judiciary. The executive arm of government and the legislative arm of government have been combined in the SMC. So, Governor Ojukwu, you are part of the executive arm of the government. You are also part of the legislative arm of the government. In other words, you make the laws for this country, even though you are the governor of a region. You are legislature. You are part of the legislature. And you decide what has to happen in certain cases, which means you are part of the executive. The president, the head of state, cannot just decide. You have to agree or not. If you say I don't agree and you get another person to say you don't agree, that thing is not done. Think about it for a second. You are the governor. Has that ever happened in Nigerian history? You're a governor. You're not going to meet your guy. You have 4 governors. You're talking to the head of state. You now say, I want to do something. 2 of you now say, we know they do. Governor, head of state now say, okay, since 2 of you are not doing, okay. That's not how it works in the military. But that's what Gowon was willing to concede. I mean, not just willing, actually conceded. Let's go on. It says here, executive and legislative powers of the federal government have been vested into the Supreme Military Council with the proviso as stipulated at Aburi. Appointments to diplomatic and consular posts, senior posts in the police, and super scale posts in the Federal Civil Service have also been vested in the Supreme Military Council. Number 5, I have this morning received a copy of the comments by the lawyers. In considering the comments of the lawyers, I submit that Your Excellency be guided by the following considerations. A, the fact that this draft decree, please pay attention. Anybody that shouts Aburi on Aburi will stand, God will judge you. And the dead amongst you and the living, God will judge all of them. Listen to this. The fact that this draft decree, presents a major victory for Your Excellency's stand and principles. I assess the success to be at least 95%. I'm not making it up. That's what you wrote. Your chief secretary is saying, I assess this decree, the success of this decree to be at least 95%. I mean, in other words, the success of what we wanted in Aburi, we have gotten that success in this decree, at least, not at most, at least 95%. You have to be possessed by demons to say no to this. But we're going to come back to this. I want to read another book very quickly. We're coming back to The Struggle for Secession by N.U. Akpan soon. I want to read you something from Hilary M. Ojukwu. God. It's only God that can have mercy on this nation. And you know the crazy, I think what actually pains me the most really is that the ones who have destroyed this country are the ones who cry the most. Shout, Aburi, we stand. You will fall down. I want to read something from A Tragedy Without Heroes by Hilary M. Ojukwu. You know, N.U. Akpan said that the draft decree gave them at least 95%. Right? Well, Hilary Ojukwu decided, it wasn't even the one that decided it. He reported another person making a statement on the fact that no, 95% was too low. He gave them even more than that, according to that particular person. Just give me a second. I'll find you that page. It's very important, so it might take us. If it takes me a while, please try and understand. I'm only doing this because it's important. I found it. Page 118. A Tragedy Without Heroes by Hilary M. Ojukwu. Please pay attention. One morning, about 10th March 1967, I got to the governor's office at the State House. There were smiles on every face. Mr. N.U. Akpan, the secretary to the military government, was the first person of note I met. That's the man who wrote the book we just read, that said at least 95% of what they wanted in Aburi was implemented in decree number 8. So he said here, this is Hilary Ojukwu. By the way, Hilary Ojukwu was the commander of Biafra's army, the very first one. So these are not just anybody. These are like main people in the government. I got to the governor's office at the State House. There were smiles on every face. Mr. N.U. Akpan, the secretary to the military government, was the first person of note I met. He greeted me with the expression, "Shake my hand, we have made it, we have made it." I asked, "What?" "Gowon has issued the right decree on Aburi," he replied. I later walked across to the office of the governor's private secretary, Mr. Don Egbe. He confirmed the news. He added that as a legal man, lawyer, he observed that the new decree number 8, contained 98% of the Aburi decisions, and that the remaining 2% was military jargon that could not fit into legal terms. Do you hear that? 98%. If you send Peking go school, Peking get 60%, you know, try. 70, of course, you're my son, like you have done well. 80, oh boy, we're going to go and get you something. 90, case finished. 90-80, cuckoo, take the house. Like, the point is, if you send a child to school and you got this kind of grade, you'll be happy as a parent. But not Ojukwu. Because it's not about joy or happiness. It's about ego and ambition built on stupidity. Because how on earth would you go against this? Let's go on. If I'm going to read everything again. One morning, about 10th March 1967, I got to the governor's office at the State House. There were smiles on every face. Mr. N.U. Akpan, the secretary of the military government, was the first person of note I met. He greeted me with the expression, "Shake my hand, we have made it, we have made it." I asked what? "Gowon has issued the right decree on Aburi," he replied. I later walked across to the office of the governor's private secretary, Mr. Don Egbe. He confirmed the news. He added that as a legal man, he observed that, quote unquote, the new decree number 8, contained 98% of the Aburi decisions, and that the remaining 2% was military jargon that could not fit into legal terms. We congratulated each other. As soon as the military governor entered his office, I followed him in a much more relaxed mood. "Congratulations, Your Excellency. I understand that the new decree on Aburi is out and embodies all you've been asking for. Who told you?" No, I won't accept it. It is too late. Too late. Wait, back up. You were in Aburi 4th and 5th of January 1967. You go back to Nigeria around the 7th. You had a meeting on January 14th. You said you want a decree on 21st as though you're the Oga of everybody, which makes no sense. People have to sit on it. By February, there was a meeting of all the secretaries of the government, of all the governments, of the regional governments. March 10, just about 2 months after your meeting in Ghana, you have a decree and you're saying it is too late. Too late for what exactly?
Congratulations, Your Excellency. I understand that the new decree on Aburi is out and embodies all you've been asking for.
Congratulations, Your Excellency. I understand that the new decree on Aburi is out and embodies all you've been asking for. Who told you? No, I won't accept it. It is too late. My face dropped and I was short of words. Indeed, Gowon are delayed in issuing the correct decree on the decision of Aburi. Then it is also a fact that the advice of the Committee of the Federal Permanent Secretaries and Executive Council might have played a part both in the delay and the shortcomings of the decree. Aburi decisions reduced Nigeria to a confederation, and what is worse, it created regional armies in the name of area commands. Regional armies. So you are the governor of the region, but you have an area command. In other words, you have Agbara, you have power over the army in your region. What else do you want if you're a human being? Thank you, Howdy, on YouTube. Thank you for the gift. God bless you. Howdy says maybe we should put across to our rep. Maybe we should put it across to our reps in the House of Senate. Sorry, I'll take that again. Maybe we should put it across to our reps in the House and Senate to support creation of Biafra. I think we should. But I want them to even do it. I want them to shikpa so we can support them. You know, when I talk, you almost think that and they say it, you hate us. You don't even get it. I love you to the point that I wish you knew where your problem was. And as Nigerians, I wish we also knew what was up, because if we knew, nobody would be blackmailing us with nonsense. I'm saying you hate me. If you think I hate you, that's your business. Who does this? Regional army. So now we're saying that army is under the federal government. No, this one allows you as the governor to command your own army, even though you are, because of course you're part of the SMC. The next time I hear you on Aburi, we stand. I'll tell the person, God will judge you, because this is at this point God has to judge these people. Can't be telling us. They be blackmailing and manipulating, gaslighting you with Aburi. What's an Aburi? What's an Aburi? What was an Aburi? Let's go back to this. I'm hissing because it's just irritating. And this is what Ojukwu says. It would have been unbecoming of an officer and gentleman if Gowon had rejected the Aburi Accord completely. But it did not. For Ojukwu, history will fault him for this strategic mistake. That is, rejecting the decree on Aburi, no matter how late and relatively incomplete. Perhaps he had bargained for more. 98%. Essentially 100%. Because they said the remaining 2% are just military jargon. It's not saying that the 2% doesn't allow, to give him, it's just saying that no, like, it's just military jargon. We got everything we wanted. Now let's go back to the book by Ẹkáàbọ. And please remind me, if I forget, we're going to go to America. We're going to read American stuff today as we round up, because back to Ẹkáàbọ's book, The Struggle for Secession. The fact that this draft decree presents a major victory for Your Excellency's stand and principles, I assess the success to be at least 95%. B, the federal government has made this capitulation mainly because the whole world, through their accredited representatives, have brought pressure to bear on them in support of Your Excellency's moral stand. The feelings and reactions of these countries through their diplomats should not be ignored if something happened to show that their efforts have been in vain. In other words, they've been pressuring the government of Nigeria. Now that they're giving you this thing, take it so it doesn't look like all the work that America and Britain and all these countries did was just for nothing. See, unless the departures in the draft decree have been very fundamental, it is advisable that we ignore them so as to avoid giving the impression that we do not want a settlement. This is your secretary for this thing where they don't give you. More just take them, because if you don't take them, go be like say we don't want a settlement. D, Your Excellency's policy and public statements show that you are striving for a peaceful and Your Excellency's policy and public statements show that you are striving for a peaceful and just settlement of our difficulties through negotiation. The outright rejection of this draft decree will dash every hope of a peaceful settlement and avoidance of a violent conflict. This was in March. 2 months later, Ojukwu is declaring Biafra. I think Ẹkáàbọ is like this because he's not Igbo. With all due apologies, with all due respect, because he's not Igbo. I don't know, Boyo Mini. Maybe it's the water that people drink.
Number 6, I will now make brief comments on the points raised by the lawyers. Reading them through, I see that they are...
Number 6, I will now make brief comments on the points raised by the lawyers. Reading them through, I see that they involve technicalities. I agree that decrees promulgated by the Supreme Military Council should be signed by the chairman of that council, but the chairman has not yet been elected. And to insist on this issue, please, oh God, please, I'm sorry with all this, oh God, is because I'm using that to actually stop myself from saying certain things. So please bear with me. Listen to this. This is one of the reasons his own lawyer said he should reject the decree that was not signed by the chairman. Chairman, where you say you no agree, say that person be chairman until you have your next meeting. Say the head of state, you cannot agree that the head of state Gowon is your chairman until you have the next SMC, and that's when you're going to appoint or agree with him being chairman. So he hasn't signed yet. You're not using that as a basis for not agreeing. It's a draft decree. They have not promulgated it yet, though. Let's read. I agree that decrees promulgated by the Supreme Military Council should be signed by the chairman of that council, but the chairman has not yet been elected. And to insist on this issue for this particular decree presupposes that the Supreme Military Council must meet and elect the chairman so that he might sign the decree. This will be contrary to the stand of this government, that there can be no question of Your Excellencies attending a meeting of the Supreme Military Council before this decree is promulgated. In other words, you said that you're not going to attend any meeting until the decree is promulgated. They are showing the draft of the decree. You now said you cannot agree to the draft because there is no signature. Because you have also said there will be no signature until you appoint somebody at your next meeting. In other words, it's like chicken and egg. Let me say it slowly. Number one, they said this is the head of state and chairman of the SMC. Say no, I will not agree. I will not agree. It's go on. I will not agree. Then they say, okay, so what are we going to do? When we have the next meeting, we're going to appoint him as the chairman, right? Okay, good. Okay, this is draft decree. It's not signed by the chairman. It can't be signed by the chairman because we have not met yet. But I'm not going to go. Well, you said that until this decree is promulgated, you will not go for any meeting of the SMC. So that means that if you were thinking properly, sir, you would need to sign in where you then appoint the chairman who can now sign all the papers you want in your life. These are the people that are leading some people, Abi. This is sad. Buru buru. Let me just be easing like this because it's better for me to hiss than to say what I want to say or what I would have loved to say because I can go buru and Aburi. Do Igbos know this thing? Do they know these things? Because there's no way any group will know this thing and will still be doing hype-up all over the place. Shouting on Aburi, we stand. You went to school, oh, you have degrees, and you are fighting on something that was already taken care of. If you knew what Ojukwu did, you would probably assume him. You know that thing happened in Rome. They exhumed the Pope. Was dead though. They brought him up to answer for his crimes. And when they I don't know how he was supposed to answer, but then he was found guilty. They now sentenced him in death. By the way, when he was answering for his crime, they exhumed him. They made him sit down, skeleton. Power is like issue is something else. There is a way government works. Not all this Nigeria, no retreat, no surrender, no victor, no vanquished. We are all good people, great nation. This is just nonsense. There's no structure. There's no order. This one, they exhumed the dead, put him on a chair to answer for his crime, found him guilty, sentenced him to whatever kidney was supposed to go to, just to deal with that thing he did. I'm not saying you do it for some people, but you get the point. If you have to do it, you have precedence. Let's go back to the book.
I don't want to lose. I mean, it's just painful.
Yeah, because I'm smiling because I don't want to lose. I mean, it's just painful. Be there be praying for Nigeria to change. Nigeria should change. You know, I don't value in there. Okoton for area follower. Where was I? Let's start the signature thing again. So he says, I will now make brief comments on the points raised by the lawyers. These were the young lawyers that Esau Eligo was referring to in the other book. He says, I will now make brief comments on the points raised by the lawyers. Reading them through, I see that they involve technicalities. I agree that decrees promulgated by the Supreme Military Council should be signed by the chairman of that council. But the chairman has not yet been elected. And to insist on this issue for this particular decree presupposes that the Supreme Military Council must meet and elect the chairman so that he might sign the decree. This would be contrary to the stand of this government that there can be no question of Your Excellencies attending a meeting of the Supreme Military Council before this decree is promulgated. In any case, the Aburi decision spoke of the chairman of the Supreme Military Council, head of the federal military government, and commander-in-chief as being one and the same person. The question of which of these three designations he should use in signing the decree is a matter of detail. Like, it doesn't matter. For the present decree number 7, perhaps we could ask that it be promulgated by the Secretary of the Federal Military Government by the order of the Supreme Military Council. If the Federal Military Government should be difficult over this issue, then let it be signed by whoever wishes to sign it, provided the Supreme Military Council will take the earliest opportunity to ratify such a signature. In other words, if signature is your problem in life, let Everybody in Nigeria signed this thing, and then you guys, SMC, cannot say that okay, we are going to ratify it later. How on earth are you going to hold everybody to ransom because you want a signature that cannot get there based on what you think is, or who you think should be the chairman? Even though in Aburi we all agree that 3 posts are occupied by one person. What are 3 posts? Number one, the chairman of the Supreme Military Council, the head of the federal military government, and the commander-in-chief. These 3 posts, now only one person now go on. So why are you going all over the place about this? Adekunle Rotimi says, is it safe then to suggest that NU Akpan was not fully privy to the inner workings of the Ojukwu government at the time he reviewed the draft decree? Of course it was privy. Maybe you were not here when we started. The draft decree was sent to Ojukwu. He gave the decree to the lawyers. The lawyers reviewed the decree. He then got the draft decree and the reviews of the lawyers. He is making his own comments on the lawyers' comments. That means it's literally part of the inner workings. I mean, what do you mean? It's part of it now. It's privy to the inner workings. He's making recommendations based on the recommendations of the lawyers. How inner do you get? They were now doing Law 101. Who should sign? Who should not sign? In fact, if you have the opportunity, because this thing is long, right? If I want to read every single thing that he made comment on, it's just sad. It's just sad. For instance, you know what? Section 6(4). I do not honestly follow the lawyer's comments here. The examples given reflect the advice of the officials in Benin, but my discussion of this section with the economic advisor shows that the wording of the draft decree enumerating the subject covers the case. I do not think that it would be very realistic to insist on the laws, since in fact the Supreme Military Council does not and cannot administer existing laws, which is a matter for the courts and the executive officials of the government. Like Parliament, they make laws for others to administer. In other words, they were looking for things that had no bearing. You know when you get everything, if you want to know the 2% that they're looking for, or the 1%, buy the book, The Struggle for Secession by N.U. Akpan. You will cry for this country. Let me read one of those things to you in Schedule 1. It says, as a layman, I saw in the revival of this section the means to tie the hands of the federal military government by ensuring that the concurrence of all the military governors is secured before anything affecting the whole country is done, as recommended by the officials in Benin. Section 69, subsection 6 appears to have done this. Then it says, can we really reject the draft on this score? I think if we make the point, people in Lagos will not resist. After all, they have lost much more worthwhile powers. This is his secretary saying, these people in Lagos, they've already lost a lot of powers anyway. So if you tell them that you want to, they've lost all the powers gone. Certainly, again, does this not depend on which of the 3 designations vested in one person should be used? Certainly, the Supreme Military Council must have someone to process the applications, compile papers, and offer advice on the qualification, and so on and so forth. Your Excellency, this is the last paragraph. Your Excellency, my views already expressed regarding other sections cover the remaining sections of the draft. My final submission is this. It has been a battle between this region and the federal government to get this decree in its present form. The federal government has been defeated with heavy casualties. We have won a major victory, and if we sustain minor casualties, we should not throw away that victory. Nobody ever goes into a battle without expecting casualties. I should think that we have hardly sustained casualties in this case. Signed, N.U. Akpan, SMG. If you'd like to be a part of the prayer meeting, we need to pray for this country. Not prayer of Oluwashi. I'm saying prayer of sense. Paul said, I will pray in the spirit, I will pray in understanding. most of Nigeria's prayer, there's no understanding. I'm actually serious. So one day I'm going to talk about it. We should pray. Not prayer like I'm saying you pray with sense. Because, oh boy, that's the only thing I can do at this moment because it's just painful, man. Are you guys here? Is anybody here? Because everywhere is just quiet. Just say hello in the comment section so I know that you are with me, whether you're on YouTube or on Facebook or here on TikTok. Thank you very much. That last paragraph is actually very powerful, by the way. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you. Thank you. I like that last paragraph is very, very powerful. It says here, Your Excellency, my views already expressed regarding the other sections cover the remaining sections of this draft. My final submission is this. It has been a battle between this region and the federal government to get this decree in its present form. The federal government has been defeated with heavy casualties. We have won a major victory, and if we sustain minor casualties, we should not throw away that victory. Nobody ever goes into a battle without expecting casualties. I should think that we have hardly sustained casualties in this case. Now, read some of the things they also said before we finish, before we go to the other book. It says here, I apologize to readers for having to bore them. By the way, I already read that he signed, the whole thing was signed, NU Akman SMG, that's Secretary to the Military Government, 4/3/1967. I apologize to readers for having to bore them with the above lengthy extract. I do it to typify the sort of futile and frustrating battle I had to put up, in the honest belief that those with whom I worked sincerely wanted to resolve the Nigerian crisis peacefully. The person who put into words the quote-unquote objections of the lawyers was the lawyer who accompanied me to Benin and fully participated in the discussions leading to the recommendations faithfully embodied in the draft decree. The truth was, as I later discovered to my disillusionment, that they were not interested in anything but secession and eventual war. This matter is further developed in the next 2 or 3 chapters, particularly in the chapter on secession. The Supreme Military Council met as scheduled in Benin and passed the decree without the attendance of the military governor of the East. So he had written that letter on the 4th of March, but they passed that letter later. They promulgated that decree on the 17th of March 1967. So it says here they passed it, they promulgated the decree without the attendance of the military governor of the East. The military governor of the East refused to accept the decree on the ground that it has not received his concurrence as required by the Aburi decisions, a concurrence he willfully withheld. The next chapter explains the background and so on and so forth. In fact, let me read it. The next chapter explains the background and prop to the recalcitrance of the East and the strategy adopted to appear right and to make others appear wrong. There's something that's actually quite sad about what we just read. When you said that one of the lawyers who told Ojukwu not to agree actually accompanied this man, the secretary of the military government, accompanied him to Benin. They made recommendations together in Benin. The recommendations were implemented in the decree, and yet he said no to it because according to him, it says here, I think I should read, it says that they were not, the truth was, as I later discovered to my disillusionment, that they were not interested in anything but secession and eventual war.
You said Buhari.
All right. Thank you very much for listening to that. That was Decree 8 implemented Aburi. So why did Ojukwu reject it? I shared a clip from this video, on different platforms. And someone on that, a number of people who are on Facebook or Twitter, say things like, oh, that is a particular thing that I am intentionally missing. Of course, he insulted me before he started talking, and then insulted me after. It looks like people in the South are not properly raised. Generally speaking, there's no respect. There's just uncouth behavior, which is quite sad, considering it could be better. Anyway, the person made the statement. I want to find you that stuff, and I'm going to read something that I think will help us understand it. To those of us, of course, who are serious about learning, and I know many of us are here. Okay. Dr. Badru says Peter Odumosu helped go on. Ojukwu rejected the decree which opened the way for his Waterloo. He was also helped by his lawyers. Igbo lecturers, Igbo lawyers, Igbo civilians, Igbo politicians, Igbo officers just gather to destroy the lives of everybody, particularly their own people. And it's quite a shame that those people blame nobody else. Those people choose not to blame their own people who actually caused the wala and be looking for other people outside their ethnicity to blame for their predicament. So the person said, let me just look for the right one because okay, anyway, the gist of what he said was that you deliberately omitted the section that empower Gowon to declare state of emergency in any of the region unilaterally. And that alone means we are back to where we were before Operation Wetia. So let me just say this to everybody who is here. Folks in the Southeast were raised to be victims, and they also raised to abhor the idea of accountability and responsibility. So they will insult you and lie rather than say, you know what, our forebears messed up. Now, what he said that, and this was what Ojukwu also said to them, because again, I assumed that they couldn't think. Maybe they could, I don't know. Anyway, the point is, he said that, right, that Gowon could unilaterally declare state of emergency in any region, but that's not true. So I'm going to read you an excerpt of the decree, especially the part that has to do with state of emergency. One second, please. All right. The provisions of Section 70 of the Constitution of the Federation gives powers to the Supreme Military Council. Please pay attention, please. So I'm reading Decree 8, okay? So this is Section 70. The provisions of Section 70 of the Constitution of the Federation give powers to the Supreme Military Council to take over the executive and legislative functions of the regional government during any period of emergency, which might be declared in respect of that region by the Supreme Military Council, while those of Section 71 give the Supreme Military Council power to take appropriate measures against the region which attempts to secede from the rest of the Federation, or where the executive authority of the region is being exercised in contravention of Section 86 of the Constitution. What's all this Turinchi? If you listen to the video, to the recording, you must have heard, heard me say that one of the, I can call it beautiful, but I think it's also ridiculous, to be honest, but ridiculously good. One of the beautiful things or ridiculously good things about Decree number 8 was the fact that the head of state chose not to be a dictator. Unlike Ironsi, who was the Supreme Military Commander, this man chose to be the Commander-in-Chief of Armed Forces, but not the supreme head of the country. In other words, he was head of state, he was Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, but he was not a dictator in terms of, in the sense that he could just decree and it has to be done. He decided to establish something called SMC, Supreme Military Council, Who were the members of the SMC? Himself, the head of state, and the governors of the regions. So we had 4 regional governors and himself, the head of state, making 5 people in the SMC. And each of them had veto power. So if he came up with any idea and 2 of the 4 governors say no, that thing is not going to fly. That's what Gowon did for Nigeria. Emergency, he couldn't do it by himself. He could not unilaterally do it. He had to depend on at least 3. Right? He had 4 regional governors. If 2 said yes and 2 said no, he will not be able to do it. So he would need 3. If you're not a troublemaker, what makes you think that they want to come and declare state of emergency in your region when it's not as if you are causing wala? Or are we supposed to just let the country go like a wire because you have a dream? Actually, it's a nightmare, which is what people are experiencing in that part of the country now. Then they said that if any region decides to secede, let me read this. This is section 71 of decree number 8. If any region decides to secede or attempts to secede, the Supreme Military Council has the power to take appropriate measures against such a region which attempts to secede from the rest of the federation, or where the executive authority of the region is being exercised in contravention of section 86 of the Constitution. In other words, you couldn't just do what you wanted to do, and I think Ojukwu just wanted to do what he wanted to do, and the children that are just insulting me now also want to be stupid like their fathers and just do whatever they wanted to do or what they want to do, and nobody should be able to ask them anything. That is chaos. And I hope that people are learning, because the thing is happening again. They'll give you opportunities, you still blow it in the name of Agidi to the Joe Deron cigar. But I answered that question, and then there's another question somebody asked in the comment section. Just answer this and we'll bring people up. So if you'd like to contribute, please send your request. Let me just quickly answer the other question. So the gentleman in the comment section asked why it was called Iboku. Now, we've talked about this several times. So if you please go on YouTube, Busuri Ori's channel, and look for why the January 66 coup is called an Iboku. It's called an Iboku because of 3 questions that we got simple answers for. Number 1, who planned the coup? Majority were Igbos, but does that mean that the coup was Igbo? No. Why? Because most of the officers were Igbos after all, so naturally you're going to have more Igbo officers planning the coup. So that's not enough, but it's important to, remember that point. Who planned the coup? Mostly Igbos. 85.7% of the planners of the coup was Igbo. Okay, so 6 out of 7. Next question, who were the victims of the coup? Everybody but Igbo. Who were the beneficiaries of the coup? Igbos and no one else. So that's why it's an Igbo coup. Now that's a summary. If you want to understand it, in depth, please check out the video on YouTube. Why the January 1966 coup is called an Igbo coup. Thank you very much. I don't know if anybody has any questions. Tomorrow we're going to actually start that series on Awo is incarceration. I like to be sure we're done with this Aburi thing so we can just get deep into it. So tomorrow is Thursday. We're going to be on camera. We're going to start the new series, and I'm sure we're going to have a great time together. And we'll be reading a number of books, so come prepared, and we'll have a lot of fun as well. I don't know if anybody has any other question. That was a lot to listen to, by the way, so I understand. If you want to go back and listen, please, again, there's a video. What we played is the video, right? The recording. So you want to check out the video on the YouTube channel, Busuri Oris. It's also the create implemented Aburi. So why did Ojukwu reject it? So you find it there on YouTube. All right. I don't know if there's any question, but the point I think we should all remember is this. One of the lessons that I learned from all this is that if you see a person who is incorrigible and who behaves like a brat, don't concede anything to them. Okay, it doesn't really matter what you do; they still will not listen. It's the same thing that happens today. Do you know that there are roads being constructed in the southeast right now by the federal government? But regardless of that, you see here that nobody's doing anything in the southeast. In other words, it doesn't matter what you do. You could decide to decide to, I don't know, create C in the southeast today. You'd have done nothing. It doesn't matter what you do. people are just conditioned to be negative and to always complain, and you can't win that war. That's the truth. So just do what you feel is right, but don't try to pander to anybody, right? Be kind, do what's right, but don't do things because you want to be politically correct and may not be like say. Let it be like say if you want to be like say, because no matter what you do, it will still be like say. Okay. So we have, I think we have one person who wants to come up. We'll make this very snappy. Tomorrow we'll spend, considerable time on the new topic. So let's have Math Tuition. Good evening, Math Tuition.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate. Okay,
sir.
Couple of points. I think that's your final emphasis on the fact that General Gowon set up Supreme Military Council versus Inrosis making himself the Supreme Commander. It's a whole lesson on its own. Essentially, Gowon set up a Godhead, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. And for that time in our evolution as the new country Nigeria, it's fantastic. It's beautiful. But for some reason, Ojukwu and his clannish guys couldn't see the beauty that Gowon has tried to bring out of the ashes of the mayhem that was led by the Igbo military and political leadership at that time. And it's instructive for us that groupthink is a dangerous thing. And we need to be very careful. If our fathers in Yoruba nation have this kind of philosophy, then who are you to not say that you knew everything, nobody can talk to you, nobody can correct you? If you look at what Akpan said in his book, they were practically begging Ojukwu to, this is the best deal. Can you imagine for a moment that Ojukwu had acceded and the regions had thrived for the last 50 years? Can you imagine where the space called Nigeria would have been? Let me contrast that to what we currently have. Let's take the Southeast as an example. We have a region the size of Oyo State, and it is less governed by 5 different governors, and yet it is less developed than Oyo State. The VAT that Oyo State is paying, all the 5 states in the Southeast, they're not making that kind of money.
They're not making half of it.
Is that not a statement on our brethren in the Southeast that we need to start thinking and talking to ourselves, because we are all losing out? The lack of economic development in the Southeast is a loss to the Federation of Nigeria, because we know fantastic Igbo men and women that are dynamic, entrepreneurship, they want to do well, they want to do so for their families. But in a system of dysfunction and mediocrity, this is what you get. It's unfortunate that the Fulanis had perfected the dysfunction of mediocrity that the Igbos introduced in the 60s. It's unfortunate, but there's something called the law of forced use. On a massive scale. 50 years later now, the Fulanis hijacked it and perfected mediocrity. And look at where we are. And that is why we thank God for the government of Mr. Shoju Tinubu. Have you ever heard in your own lifetime that the Chief Justice is leading a case in a Nigerian court? The terrorism case that they are handling now, that happened in Benue State, the Attorney General is leading it to go and talk in court. For me, in my lifetime, insists I've never heard a Nigerian Chief Justice Minister leading a case, either defending or prosecuting. And I think that's very refreshing. So we need to encourage our people, number one, the Yoruba nation, the young people, to know their history. Number two, we need to encourage our Igbo brethren to go and learn their history, that they have been victim of propaganda and the root of the hurt. And we thank God for what Soludo is trying to do recently, because he can see the danger of propaganda and the fruit of it. It was bad enough that our colossal colonial master rigged the system. Because if you want to build it, if you want to hire somebody to come and do a job for you, Olotu, you ask for a tender. If you ask for a tender, you do competitive bidding and you look for the best. Or even if you have a preferred tender, you do a preferred tender based on antecedent, based on performance. Meanwhile, our so-called colonial master handed power to those who don't have good antecedent or demonstrated capability. So if you think of Nigerian three regions at that time as soils, you have sandy soil, you have a soil that has peat within it or ira, and then you have a soil that is stable. The East, because of the corruption, is like ira, is land with ira inside it, mud, clay, and everything that's not treated. The North was like the sand. And the Southwest, the Yoruba Western region at the time, was like the stable ground, because they did an economic miracle, educational miracle in the last decade before independence. They had all that data, and yet they manipulated to build a house on a sand and ira. Are we surprised that it collapsed? We should not be surprised. And after that demise, look at what came out of it. Out of it, a sinking house. Until today, that's what Nigeria is experiencing. So we need a new realm of leadership to re-educate people. This place can flourish. This place can thrive. All the nations in Nigeria can be redefined to thrive in their nations, in their spaces, like in Europe, and all our people can really do well. I raise my submission, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Master Ishan. I really do appreciate that. And yeah, that's the spirit. And we look forward to having that kind of structure in Nigeria. Before we go, I want to give like a bonus, on which is going to be the summary of the decree. Okay? I want you to, we read part of it, but so I found a way to put everything together, like a short summary. I found it online. And I think this was written by Dr. Noah. So essentially, everything we read, by the way, someone wrote in the comment section that NU Akpan book is not popular. There is a need to popularize the book and similar ones. Yes, so we'll keep talking about it, and I think people should actually get it. The beautiful thing about this whole thing is that NU Akpan was with Ojukwu up until the end of the war. Like, it was there till 1970. It was in the Eastern region. Government. And he still wrote all these things. And he said it. He said, the crazy thing is that the people that he went to Benin with, right, they didn't care about the decree. They just wanted a war. He said because they made suggestions at the conference, and the suggestions were implemented in the decree. Yet, they advised Ojukwu to reject that decree. Sincerely, there is no way you are telling me there were no demons involved in what happened. There is no way. People are possessed. Anyway, let me read a summary of the decree for you. The main feature of this decree, decree number 8 of 1967, the main feature of this decree is the vesting in the Supreme Military Council of both the legislative and executive powers of the government of the Federation. We said it earlier. So remember, at the time, there was no parliament, there were no Senate or House of Reps or anything. So at the Senate or at the House of Reps or at the executive, which is presidency, everything, the powers that they have, the legislature and the executive, were now reposed in the SMC. Now, I should also say this. It was not like Ironsi did not have SMC, but his SMC acted in advisory capacity. He also had his SMC, but they advised him. He decided what he wanted to do. Do you understand? He had advisors, but the buck stopped at his stage because he was the be all and all. He was one that told everybody. He just made the decrees and everybody had to follow. What Gowon did that I consider to be his genius was to take that power away from himself in order to appease Ojukwu and say, you know what, guess what, I'm not going to even, I will not even be the one making all the decisions, and the SMC will not just be advising me. You guys will be the ones with me making the law. So we are all in the legislature now, and we are all executive. And that's why I said Gowon was not running a dictatorship. And I wish Ojukwu had said yes. By now, Nigeria would have broken if we had to. Would have evolved to the point where if we had to break, would have broken. If we wanted to succeed, would have succeeded very well. Would have been very good by now, because we had a confederacy as a matter of fact based on that decree. But let's keep reading. So yeah, the main feature of this decree is the vesting in the Supreme Military Council of both the legislative and executive powers of the government of the Federation. The Federal Executive Council, which has hitherto exercised these powers, has now been divested of them, and it is henceforth to discharge those functions that are specifically delegated to it by the Supreme Military Council. In the exercise of these legislative and executive powers, the concurrence of the head of the military federal... I'll tell that again. In the exercise of this legislative and executive powers, the concurrence of the head of the federal military government and of all the military governors is for the first time made essential in respect of certain matters which are set out in section 69, subsection 6 of the Constitution. These are, to mention a few, matters affecting or relating to trade, commerce, industry, transport, the armed forces, the Nigerian police, higher education, and the territorial integrity of a region, and the provisions of the sections listed in the proviso to section 4(1) of the Constitution. Number 3. On the other hand, the legislative and executive powers of the regions have been fully restored and vested in their respective military governors. In other words, the governors can pass edicts in their regions, right? They can do it autonomously, like they're not depending on the federal government, as long as the laws do not go against or don't run contrary to the laws of Nigeria, or the federal government, or the central government, so to speak. You could pass a law, just like we used to have at the time when each region had its own constitution. I hope you know that before 66, every region in Nigeria had its own constitution, apart from the General Federal Republic, constitution. So what they're saying here is this: that each regional governor can, now has the legislative and executive powers of the regions. But the provisions of sections 86 of the Constitution of the Federation ensure that no region shall exercise its executive authority so as to impede or prejudice the exercise of the executive authority of the Federation, or to endanger the continuance of federal government. What are they saying? Or federal government in Nigeria? What are they saying is that, what are they saying here? They're saying that each region can decide what they want to do as long as it does not affect the continuing existence of the country. In other words, there's no secession involved. That's why I said the only thing, I've read this thing again and again, looking for that, loophole. The only thing that this decree doesn't grant Ojukwu, or did not grant Ojukwu, was secession. Nothing else. And like I said, there is no way any sane person will grant secession. To be fair, what Gowon considered was too much. I'm not sure I would have done it. I'm not saying I would not do it, but I'm not sure. When you're not in power, you'll be making out. I don't think, because it's not easy. But to not tell him to break the country because of you, I think it's nonsense. Especially when it was the same region that you came from that told us never to break up and said everything. Anybody that does it would be committing treason. That same region gave us the first school. That same region abolished the regional system. That same region has done all these terrible things, and that same region wants to pull out. It doesn't make sense. So the only thing that the federal government did not grant Ojukwu was the ability to secede, which is understandable, considering the fact that this man has given everything. if I ever meet General Gowon before he died, hopefully we'll live very long by the grace of God. But I'd like to ask him what he was thinking. I have an idea what he would say, Sha, because I've read some of his interviews, and even from the book by J. Sawalaigu, he'll probably say he just wanted peace to reign. He's that kind of person. But let's keep reading. So it says here, the legislative and executive powers of the regions have been fully restored and vested in the respective military governors. But the provisions of Section 86 of the Constitution of the Federation ensure that no region shall exercise its executive authority so as to impede or prejudice the exercise of the executive authority of the Federation or to endanger the continuance of federal government of Nigeria. Number 4, the provisions of Section 70 of the Constitution of the Federation give powers to the Supreme Military Council to take over the executive and legislative functions of the regional government during any period of emergency, which might be declared in respect of that region by the Supreme Military Council. I'll explain. I explained earlier anyway. While those of Section 71 give the Supreme Military Council power to take appropriate measures against a region which attempts to secede from the rest of the Federation, or where the executive authority of the region is being exercised in contravention of Section 86 of the Constitution. What are they saying here? If any region decides to go against the federal government or decides to secede, the SMC, not the head of state, the SMC will declare a state of emergency in that place. Is exactly what happened in Rivers State recently. Even this President Tinubu, could not just declare that without working with the National Assembly. If he did not do that, he'll find himself in trouble, which was why the National Assembly had to quickly sit and, talk on that matter. So what they're saying basically is that you 4 governors, or you are the National Assembly, you will have to decide if we should, declare state of emergency in any part of the country. Now, why would you go against that? Were you planning to destroy the country? Why would Ojukwu go against this? So they're saying that if you're trying to break up the country, the SMC, in other words, again, not the head of state, the SMC, at least 3 out of the 4 governors would have to vote because they all had veto power. 3 out of 4 would have to vote in order to declare state of emergency in a place and appoint a new regional government. And I think that's what they should have done. May 27, when Gowon declared, again, hindsight is 2020, so I'm not trying to say, he was a bad man. I'm just thinking what should have happened. On May 27th, instead of declaring 12 states, you should have removed Ojukwu. Remove him, appoint a new governor, and then create more states. Remove him, appoint a new governor, and then create more states. If you have to. That's why I said that if Murtala Mohammed was the head of state, that's what should have happened. He pampered this man. And that's why I said that if Murtala Mohammed was the head of state, Ojukwu would now have seen another day in Enugu. He'll be somewhere inside Kirikiri. And if they had done that, he would not have killed Ademo. They will just arrest him and lock him up. And if they had done that, he would not have killed Ademo. He would not have killed Victor Banjo. He would not have been able to kill Ifajuna. He would not have caused the war. The millions of people that died in the East would not have died. The young people who are now perpetual victims will not be victims. You see how one action or inaction, actually in this case, could actually affect generations of people because you're trying to be gentle. You should be gentle, but you should be firm. Ojukwu was just, and that's the funny thing, it's like a line. You always have one Azikiwe and Ronsi and Ojukwu. And if you go further down, eventually you land on Namdaziki. Sorry, what's his name? Nnamdi Kanu and Samanepa. Like it's a straight line. There are others between them, but you can fill in the gap. On the question of amendment to a regional constitution. All right. Number 5. On the question of amendment to a regional constitution, Section 5 of the Constitution of the Federation has been suitably modified to the effect that in respect of certain matters mentioned in the section, like the appointment, tenure of office and terms of service of High Court judges, the functions of the Public Service Commission, the establishment of a consolidated revenue fund, and so on, any edict made shall come into operation only with the concurrence of the Supreme Military Council. You can make your, if you want to amend stuff, you will need the Supreme Military Council to work with you. Again, I think this is understandable. It's a military regime after all. Even this one, guys, think about it. You've never seen this kind of thing in Nigeria. I don't know if it happens anywhere in the world, to be clear. Imagine when we were under military, era in Nigeria. Imagine, let's say, Raji Rasaki in Lagos telling President Ibrahim Babangida what he wanted to do, and he would just tell him not to do it. Okay, you want to do it now? I'll bring you to the meeting. Let's discuss it. It never happened. Even the Maroko thing. I mean, let's not go into another matter. But you see Morocco. If you see the way that one went, they had to explain and explain and explain, and then they had to do live section, the one we had last week, where we were telling Americans that as far as it was concerned, Ojukwu said, as far as it was concerned, the East was a separate nation. This was October 1966. That the East was a separate nation from Nigeria. This was even before Aburi. And after Aburi, he kept saying that thing. Anyway, let's quickly finish this stuff. Number 6, the Advisory Judicial Committee established under Decree Number 1 of 1966, and which before now tendered advice to the Supreme Military Council regarding appointment of judges all over the Federation, has been abolished. Listen to this. Each military governor now controls appointment of judges of the High Court of his region. But the appointment of the judges of both the Supreme Court of Nigeria and the High Court of Lagos, which not Lagos State, the capital, High Court of Lagos, is made the sole responsibility of the head of state? No, of the Supreme Military Council. What does this mean? It means that in your region, as a governor, you get to choose who will be your judge, your High Court judge or judges. In other words, it's not going to be something from the center. You can decide it. You will have to decide that. However, if you want to appoint Supreme Court judges, you will still need to put them out. In other words, the head of state cannot just say, okay, you know what, I want this person, and this person to be Supreme Court judges. No, or even High Court judges at the federal capital law. The governors of the regions will still have to be part of that decision-making process. What else do you want from a human being like go on? And it says all appointments to posts in the superscale group 6 and above in the public service of the Federation and appointments to posts of Deputy Commissioner of Police and above in the Nigerian Police Force are now to be made by the Supreme Military Council. What does this mean? If you are going to appoint anybody to superscale, like in the federal civil service, right, or you want to choose an IGP, Deputy Commissioner of Police, all those kind of things, including, of course, we have not read it yet, but I'll read it later, Sha. Let me just read everything before I explain together. The functions formally discharged under the sections 110 and 146 of the Constitution of the Federation of the Federal Public Service Commission and the Police Service Commission, respectively, are now to that extent limited. Appointments to the offices of Ambassador, High Commissioner, and other principal representatives of the Republic in countries other than Nigeria are now under the decree to be made by the Supreme Military Council. What does this mean? It means that if you want an IG, a Commissioner of Police, all those diplomats, ambassadors, senior federal civil service officials, all those decisions will not be made solely by the head of state. I want to ask you a question. What exactly is the head of state doing on his own? Is it, okay, let's build a road from here to here? Those ones are easy now. But these are policy-making kind of thing. He couldn't do it on his own. He had to depend on the regions. And the region still says no. And you expect a true Nigerian who has his head rightly screwed to say that the East is right. Let me say this. The East has never been right. The East has just always known how to be the victim. Look through Nigerian history. There is no time where you say, oh, the East did this thing because people hate the East and, they were right and every other person was wrong. They made the claim that they're always right and everybody is always wrong. And that mindset is what you still have in the minds of young people. And it's a shame. Because these kids, this young one that's always cursing me out, they didn't even pray to be like this. They didn't come to the world to be this stupid. They just happened to be born. And I'm glad God didn't make mistakes. I'm Yoruba, praise God. Because there's no way you're going to come up from that kind of place with that kind of mindset. And that's why when I find young people or even old people who are Igbos, who are actually open to these things and actually study and say, okay, they can even counter me. Like I always say, you don't have to agree with me, Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa. You don't have to. But to disagree with what I'm saying, you have to be able to, be someone that can think critically and at least present evidence. And when I see people like that, regardless of where they are from, I'm very happy. But particularly from the Southeast, I'm like, okay, this is good. But don't just curse people out, just ekpe. And meanwhile, you have nothing up your... Anyway, the point I'm trying to make sure is that Nigeria considered too much. Gowon considered too much, I should say, actually. Too much. The only thing Gowon did not give was the right to secede. Everything that could make him a dictator, he stripped himself of that. Almost like Jesus. Well, I'm not comparing him to Christ. I'm just saying, the Bible talked about Jesus not counting, being equal with God, robbery, and decided to leave that glory and then took on the flesh of man and came to this world. Just very humble.
We should be grateful to Gowon, but we should also learn.
Anyway, I think we should be grateful to Gowon, but we should also learn from his errors. Nobody should be that nice. I did not compose Congo Aso. I just read some comments and then we'll call it today. Tomorrow we're starting a new series that will cover the events that happened that led to the incarceration. We're not going to just start talking about, this is how we're in prison. We're going to talk about what happened, the crisis that, it's going to be a bit longer. The crisis that precipitated the whole thing about the coup or the accusation that it was behind the coup, when that thing started, and how it started, who started it, and what were they trying to get at, right? And then we'll gradually get to the point. Maybe not spend too much time building, what's the word now? Trying to understand circumstances, but we're going to spend some time there. Then we'll eventually get to the trial itself. Okay? I'm just going to quickly read some comments and then we'll call it a day. Thank you very much, Whitey Kubo on YouTube. Let me read YouTube now. Kola Farayola. Okay. I think there is hope in the East. Please listen to the video of the meeting of the Southeast Development Commission held at Enugu today. It fills me with lots of hope for the East and Nigeria at large. I mean, that would be lovely. I'll listen to that. And there's hope. See, there's no place that there's no... As long as whatever you're doing in Southeast, just do what will make people, thrive in your region rather than moving everywhere in Nigeria constituting nuisance. Because this is nuisance for the most part. Just going everywhere insulting people. I saw the news yesterday. We'll talk about it tomorrow. A few months ago, we're talking about Bill of Lagos. Now there's under easy that the state government had to now speak up on, and then there's under Seriki. Like, you always complain about the particular group. So SCDC should do what they can do in the region that will attract people back home, rather than just come from cabinet where that disturbing the whole country. So what you're saying, that would be my joy. Like, if every part of Nigeria does well, Nigeria has done well. But if one part is left behind, then or if only one part is doing well, then all of us are not doing well, to be honest. So it's better for them to do well, and I pray that it works out for every region, But thank you very much for that information. John Beck says, but are people slaves when things are not going well? Should people remain and perish? Nobody's asking you to remain and perish. Nobody's asking you to remain and perish. We're saying that if you decided the law of the land and you use that to your advantage, when you break the law and the law and people want to now use the law against you, you can't say you're not doing it again. That's stupid. That means you have no understanding of order. You're just thinking like a thief. So you said there's no secession, even though we were saying let's have a secession in 1954. We must have secession. We must have secession. You know the 1954 conference. I was thinking about something yesterday. So I watched sorry, I'm coming back to this topic. I watched a documentary on Abuja and how Murtala Mohammed, talked about creating a new capital in 1976. And I was like, how come everybody that went for that conference, how come they were so dull? Apart from Papa and his people. Sincerely, they were all dull. Most of them were dull. 1954, I said, move this capital from Lagos. They said no. 22 years later, they started planning it. 1991. 1991 minus 54 is 37 years later, they moved to Abuja. Said it in 54. They said no. It was a tribalistic, bigot nonsense they always say. 22 years later, they began to do the same thing that Papa said they should do in 54. Then 91, they moved. That same 54 was when I said, let's have secession included in this. Let's have a secession clause. Azikiwe said no. Till today, you're still crying over it. So when you tell me here that must you be part of Nigeria, must you be part and perish, it's not a problem. It's your fathers that said that you must stay here. If you want to, and can it change? Of course it can change. So who should change it? Your fathers. The Southeast has 58 representatives in Abuja, 15 senators, 43 House of Reps members. They passed many laws last year. Not one of them talked about secession. Not one. Instead, they were looking for indigenous status in everybody's land. So I'm not holding you back. If you really want to go and are so exasperated about the whole thing, I respect your, predicament. But talk to your representatives and, Meanwhile, while you're talking to them, you can actually get on the bus and go back home. Like, you've got to actually show Nigeria that we're not all that. Like, prove it to us. Just move your things, leave, and punish Nigerians. Do that fast. That will show that you're really serious about getting out of the country, and we'll respect you for that. Thank you very much. White Kubo says Ojukwu probably continued with propaganda after the war because he did not have the courage to tell his people who had lost everything that he made them fight for his own personal ambition. During the war, they lied to the point where they believed the lie. Let me tell you the worst thing that could happen to any human being as far as propaganda is concerned. If you are the one propagandizing, never believe it. It's like getting high on your own supply. You are done for, you are dead, you are gone. Like you are the one selling BS to people. Just keep, it's wrong to sell it, to be clear. It's wrong to sell BS, but at least don't believe in the nonsense you are selling. These guys believe it. They said it to the point where, I was here the other day, I was saying that Ojukwu changed a lot of things. That's why when you look at the interview that Papa granted in 1983, he said that they were telling him that Igbos hated him. He said Igbos don't hate him. He said, but there are some of them that they are far gone. He said, but some of them are still redeemable. He said, but Ojukwu is irredeemable. I was said that in 1983. Because as at that time, I was just lying. I'll give an example. I think I mentioned this last week. 1966, August 2nd. Papa was released from prison by Gowon. Right? Ojukwu sends him a telegram and says to him, your release is actually the last act of Ironsi before he died. It was on his table and it just happened, Gowon just happened to be around to, effect it. He sent that telegram in 66. By the time of the war, by 67, he began to tell the world that he was the one that released Gowon because he was the one who was governing Calabar. Governing Eastern region, and Calabar was in Eastern region. He maintained that lie up until there was an interview that was conducted in 2001 by Boston newspaper, and Ojukwu mentioned that nonsense again, saying that he was one that released Awo. But it was the same person who sent a telegram to Awo in 66 that it was in Rossi. And people in the Southeast now, they don't even know which one to believe. Even when you show them the video of Gowon welcoming Awo from prison at the airport, Even when you show them the video of, and that video is online, right? When you show them the Gazette that was published on August 12, 1968, they still don't know what to believe. They've messed up the brains of the young people. Not just young and old. They can't think straight. They can't even say, okay, this, and by the way, it can affect anybody. Let me just make that very clear. It's not about an Igbo thing. It can affect anybody. When you open yourself to propaganda and you begin to believe it, you teach your children. So that even when, and this, I used to wonder, but now I don't wonder anymore. And it's sad, to be honest. Even my discovery is sad. That the people that insult and curse me out on all platforms, they don't even talk about what you are saying. And they don't ask about the veracity of your claims. They're not trying to even debunk what you're saying. They're not providing any rebuttal. They just curse you out. Why? Because you are attacking their identity. Their identity is the fact that they are victims, and they must be victims for life. Anybody who says they are not victims is their enemy. He hates them. And you have those ones that they're supposed to convince me that they are the good ones, but they will never speak, and they are Igbos. They are good ones, by the way. They exist. I have to say that. There are many good people in the South. There's many. I've met some great people. The problem is that they don't talk. And then you begin to wonder, how do you raise your children in a culture that's so negative if you don't speak? What do you tell your kids? How do you create that buffer? Because you go online and see them just consuming news and insulting everybody. No ability to think on their own. It's just, my father said, your father was told nonsense by Okokon and them and Chino Achebe, Chukwu Merije, Ojukwu, and the rest of them. So yes, it's a shame. So yes, he lost the war, but he held on to that propaganda. And to be fair to Ojukwu, even during the war, he was winning that war of narrative as far away as Geneva, United Kingdom, United States. Everybody thought he was all that until they traveled to Nigeria and they saw what was happening. That's when they began to turn their backs on him. Because people will believe the lie until they discover the truth, and it's called that, oh boy, or we're going to allow. Your mind says it's very dangerous to have a weakling in the position of power. If General Gowon had been very firm and decisive like OBJ or Muritala, Ojukwu's excesses would have been curtailed. I'm very careful not to just throw the words like that at Gowon. He was so soft. He was so soft. But to be honest, what do you expect? It wasn't his. How old was he? He was a young man. The man was not even married when he was doing all this. He was a bachelor. He wasn't ready. He's a young man. And I feel sorry for him sometimes. Like, he wasn't ready. They didn't train them, in statecraft. Maybe he should have at least read Art of War, Machiavelli or something, The Prince. Maybe that would have helped, because it was so naive. But I think, again, like I always say, and I think it's better to mention this, Christians have to understand what it means to be Christians. Christianity is not weakness, it is not docility. We have a very warped idea of Christianity. And I'll say this, the number one reason Gowon did not fight like he should was because he was Christian, and he was being compassionate. And he has my respect for life for that. But when it comes to leadership and firmness, you start noticing his firmness after the fact. When you really begin to see Gowon firm, is in 68, but by 70 he had entered into it fully. If you see the interview that the BBC conducted in 1970 after Ojukwu ran away, the way he was speaking, that Gowon has changed. Not his fault, by the way. The old war actually made the man of steel, so to speak, out of him. Like, he was a bit tougher. Maybe not as tough as he should be eventually, but he was tougher than he was, because again, he was young. He was just green. It was in his 20s. But to be honest, you don't do it like that. Some people, you will love them by throwing them in prison. especially not because you're trying to hate them or you're trying to hurt them or anything, but because you need to protect the country, you need to protect the collective instead of pandering to, the whims and caprices of one person who would not even be satisfied anyway. He's insatiable. No matter what you do, he will still tell you he wants more. All right. So it's better that you don't make an Oliver Twist out of him. You just twist him inside. Kiri. Anyway, thank you very much for that. You might also say, same way, if Jonathan had been very firm prior to 2014, 2015, there's a possibility that Buhari would not have smelled Aso Villa, let alone the proliferations of criminals called bandits and terrorists. Wow, that's powerful. I think that's something that Gowon and Good Luck actually shares, to be honest, and it's sad, but it's a reality. When we talk about what happened January 1, 2012, that was when subsidy was removed in Nigeria. I remember that day. I was in Abuja. We're trying to go out, and we just heard the news. January 1. You can't lead that with this. When people say things like APC, they were the ones who didn't make him do it. I don't think leaders speak like that. APC did not make me do what I wanted to do. So let's have APC leaders then. That's what I like to know. If you like insult him, that's your business. He will do what he wants to do. Not because he wants to hurt you, but because he knows what's good for you. See, leaders have to be like parents. Left to your children, they would want to have chocolate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You are the one who will say, you know what, you're going to have vegetables. But all this pandering nonsense is not leadership. Kolonshanu Nigeria. It's great amongst us. And Tinubu is a good one, by the way. Not perfect, of course, nobody is, but it's good, it's firm, it's tough. And may God bless him and help him. Abubakar goes, oh, sir, you are on YouTube. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Ojukwu Emmanuel says, Nigeria is British created. Udoka Emmanuel. Are you sure? Wow, what a revelation. Thank you for that brilliant revelation. Are you sure I've even heard of that before? That the British created Nigeria? Wow. What a wonderful. Wetikubo says, only Gowon's mercy has saved the land. Hawks like Murtala could have been vengeful and destructive. And he was destructive during the war, wasn't he? Murtala doesn't have time for all this speaking English. I'm at it decimate everywhere. Even if it was Obasanjo, would have done. Let's just thank God for his grace. Udoka says, indigenous people should carve their own national identity. Okay, thank you. Whitey Kubo says, Eastern region was also created by the British. Yes, that's true. Guys, I'm reading comment section on YouTube, so please stay with me. And Udoka says, referendum decides who is Biafra. No. Referendum does not decide who is Biafra. You don't need referendum to decide identity. Why are you people like this? Guys, I'm going to take a minute on this. Well, more than a minute. Why do you need referendum to define identity? Nobody votes to define identity. You define to live or to remain. Who wants to live? The Igbos want to live. There's nothing called Biafra. The Igbos want to live. Therefore, conduct a referendum for those who want to live amongst them, or for the people that want to live. If you have more people who want to live than those who want to stay, then you begin to process of them seceding. You can't start by telling people to determine that you have to have a plebiscite to determine the identity. Who are you? They don't go around first determining people's identity. They know who they are. Everywhere in the world where people want to have this kind of thing, they don't go around first determining people's identity. They know who they are and they want to get out. Catalonia is not going everywhere saying, who is a Catalan? Who is a Catalonia? Who is a Catalonia? Did you hear that before Scotland, before they had the referendum, they first said, look, we're going to spend some time to determine by referendum, by plebiscite, who is a Scottish person. Do you guys even reason this thing before you type it in the comments? I mean, I see it, you say it, I hear it. Some of your best thinkers talk like this, and I'm wondering how.
Fight for an Igbo nation.
Why not fight for an Igbo nation?
And trust me, the entire country wants you to leave.
Fight for an Igbo nation.
We'll support you.
Be serious about you wanting to leave, and trust me, the entire country wants you to leave. We'll support you. So what you do is, you get, and I'm speaking to Udoka directly now, you get your representatives in Abuja, tell them to push for that, for the inclusion of the bill, right? That for the bill for the secession clause to be included in Nigeria's constitution. Just push for that bill. And when they give it to you, then you guys do not have referendum. Igbo people is not. There's no Biafran agency in Nigeria. There's nothing like that. Igbos will then vote if they want to leave or go. If you decide to leave, you are welcome. If you want to leave, don't ever come back. That is it. And the problem is that you guys don't want to leave. It's a ret without Nigeria, and that's the crazy part. The ones that cannot survive outside Nigeria are the ones that threaten Nigeria about secession. You can't survive. Even Ojukwu was looking for dual citizenship for his people. He said he wanted to have, there will be Biafrans and Nigerians, although they're not part of Nigeria. You guys, please just take time now. Can somebody rise in the southeast to actually teach them what happened and how Ojukwu got them in trouble, so that they will stop repeating these mistakes? Well, it is well. Go and have your referendum. God bless you. You might say Southwest governors need to be more alive to their responsibility now that they have a president who is ready to support them and their aspirations any day, anytime. Okay? Ondo State, for instance, make more in terms of revenue than Enugu State, but there's little or nothing happening in Ondo compared to Enugu State currently. I think the governors also need to get serious. Our governors need to do more, to be honest. Like, they've got to. There are many opportunities. And I think we feel happy sometimes because we are comparing ourselves with those who are less than us, which is also not very smart. Egbe was in Nigeria. We should be looking at people who are doing better than us. This is not the best of us. Anyway, I'll just read a few more things before we close. White Kubo says, even if Gowon was as naive, he was also taking advice from Awolowo. That is true, but that came much later. That came much later. Gowon was listening to and taking advice from Awo, who was a southerner. Ojukwu refused to take the good advice Azikiwe gave him to end the war. Let me tell you the truth. Do I want to talk about this today? Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. But let me just give you a hint. If you remind me tomorrow, I'll talk about it. But let me just give you a hint. If you were Ojukwu, I'm not sure you're going to listen to Azikiwe. Number one, Ojukwu was, I'm sorry to his family members, Ojukwu was stubborn. Okay? Even when Abo went to him, he did not listen. But that Azikiwe thing, sincerely, after reading, I read one book. The book is called Just Before Dawn by Kole Omotosho. In fact, it's not just one. I read Just Before Dawn by Kole Omotosho, The Forgotten Documents of the Civil War by Odiel Faymon, and then this one, On a Darkling Plain by Ken Saro-Wiwa. After reading those three books, I think I understood why Ojukwu did not respect that man. And I'll give you a hint. 1964. Ojukwu and Zik were actually going to execute that coup. They were in on it together. We talked about it already. We read some books on that matter. You see it in many books. Emeka by Frederick Forsyth, Reminiscences by David Ejo, Beckon to Serve by Sheo Shakari. It's all over the place. So they planned a coup. The crazy thing is that Azikiwe backed out, right, when he was cornered by the AGF stance and, what other people were trying to do. And also when he noticed what Tafawa Balewa was going to do, right, since he was not going to invite Tafawa Balewa to form a government. Anyway, his decision made this one just have contempt for him. Ojukwu just doesn't have respect for him since 64, although Zik was Ojukwu's father's friend. By 67, no, by end of 66 into 67, also, he was now asking for the money that Ojukwu stole. So, number one, that coup matter was on the ground. Number two was the fact that Azikiwe had stolen money, I should say, from the eastern region in 50. I mean, was the whole matter ended around 55. All right, and there was a commission of inquiry for a certain tribunal. So that's with the fact that it got, Ojukwu steered up to have a coup and then he changed his mind, and then the fact that now, money. So Gowon just used I keep saying Gowon. Ojukwu just used that money against Azikiwe, asking him to return the money. Just essentially disgraced him. So if you think about it, I think I understand why he was not taking it, why he did not respect that man. And the man also did not have any backbone. They're essentially the same. They're essentially the same. Azikiwe could not make one decision and stand by it. It was always vacillating. So maybe that's why. It's not maybe that's why. All right. Udoka says, to answer your national identity, why is all Yoruba land not in the same country? You guys, I think you just read one thing somewhere, and that will be the only thing you're talking about. What does that have to do with what we're discussing right now? Like, it doesn't matter what anybody is saying, it has to be your own topic. If you want your topic, start a live session. God bless you. Why is Yoruba not in the same country? You know the answer, so there's no need to answer that one. White Kubo says they believe that Igbo land cannot survive without the South-South. That's because they cannot. The Ndoga says our people gathered and demanded a new nation from Ojukwu. Biafra is not Ojukwu's idea nor creation. It was. Do I have time? Let me answer you. Your people did not gather to demand a new nation from Ojukwu. God, in the name of Jesus, I pray that you will raise a deliverer for Igbo people that will tell them the truth in love and lead them, to a better place. This is a shame now. Do you really believe what you're typing? Your people did not demand a nation from Ojukwu. Ojukwu told your people that it was going to give them a nation. That's what happened. You know what? I'm not going to get into this today. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. What do I say, Misha? Rojo, go to I saw that thing on Facebook. I was like, I've been Facebook today, Twitter. That is actually quite nice. You just said somebody just come and say, "What to go yato? Ele to go yato, man." Well, what dance so ataro? Oh my show. May God raise a deliverer for folks in the Southeast. Law, you need. How you Udoka? It's not a you thing. It's a group thing.
Is that what you think?
You really think Igbo people gathered and said we want to get out of Nigeria? Is that what you think happened?
Let me just help you. Okay.
Ha!
I'll tell you some books.
It is well. Let me just help you. Okay. By the way, I'll tell you some books to read. I don't know if that matters though, but so here's what I'll tell you. Very quick one. Ironsi, there was a coup in January, it was an Igbo coup. Ironsi becomes head of state. Ojukwu started eyeing that seat. He wanted to be head of state. He didn't respect Ironsi that much, but it was going to help Ironsi until Ironsi's time was over, and then he would be able to step into that. And then he began to. One of the things he did was to help Ironsi draft a unitary decree, or at least attempt to draft a unitary decree by using his own attorney general in the eastern region. Okay? For a long time, he always wanted to become something. By June, okay, so May was when Ironsi promulgated Decree 34 that caused trouble. They had a meeting in Lagos, and by June 7, 1966, Ojukwu told the Attorney General that he was going to pull the eastern region out of Nigeria. By the way, 63, Igbo politicians were going to actually secede, even though 9 years prior, it was Azikiwe that said secession was going to be a treasonable offense and there would be indivisibility of the federation. Your fathers did not try. It's a shame. That was 63. 66, you know, about living in the riots in the north, which happened because of what Ironsi did with the backing of Ojukwu and the rest of the crew. Please read Just Before Dawn by Kole Omotosho. It's probably going to help you if you don't mind. Just Before Dawn by Kole Omotosho. You find the book on Read-Only Books, by the way. This man does all of those things, and then his Attorney General said that he had always wanted to take over from Ironsi, and this was going to be his opportunity to pull out. This was before Ironsi died. This was in June. Ironsi died in July, right? Or was killed in July, and then there was riot in the north, then there was riot in the east, which led to another set of a sequence of riots in the north. And then he called Igbos to return and expelled every non-Igbo from the south, from the eastern region. Igbos did not gather to say want a nation. When he now did that, himself, in a weak clique, Igbo lecturers and politicians and some officers began to plan to break away. Your mothers and fathers were told what to do. Don't think that you guys had a meeting and say, okay, we want to break out. They told you what they wanted you to do. They then sold you the idea, and they were very good at it. If there's anything that Ojukwu was good at, and Azikiwe, by the way, and Achebe, propaganda. Very good. Very, very good. They told your parents what to believe. They sold the idea to them, packaged it so well, repeated it often, to the point where they thought it was their own idea. And I've said it before, if you want to understand how this thing works, watch a movie. There's a movie I think you should watch if you're interested. It's by Christopher Nolan. It's titled Inception. Watch that movie. How ideas grow, or how ideas are birthed in you. You may have to watch it by 2 or 3 times before you understand. I don't think I can watch it once and get it. That's the honest truth. Unless, of course, even if you're a genius, you probably need to watch it more than at least twice. Anyway, the point is, they planted the idea in your parents. Your parents thought that they wanted to break out of Nigeria, and they got your parents in trouble. So, but if you want to go with this story, it's good, Sha. Let's read some things from Doka before we go. I wish Doka could come up, but in fact, it's even past 7, so I'm almost done. It says, did South make us the richest tribe in Africa? Are you dumb? Who made you richest tribe? You're not even richest tribe in your village, you're shouting Africa. Meanwhile, why are you always going straight to money that you don't have to prove that you are something? You are so poor, all you have is money. And you don't even have that money, self. You'll be shouting singlet wearing billionaires in the Navy. You're not serious. And the last thing you said, which is the last thing I'm going to read because I'm tired of your shenanigans. It says, bro, they insult Black Africa because we just sit and accept colonial identity. Our people carved. Oh, God, what's it, Jerry? If you want to break out of Nigeria, go and break out. Anything that makes you still blame Britain for what you're going through in Nigeria means that you're not thinking straight. You have your own problem. You're looking for Britain. Is it Britain that says you don't have secession clause? In 2026? Responsibility. Which one is Britain, the Guinea Oga? Am I saying there's no neo-colonialism or imperialism? Of course it exists. But you're not the only one. It happened to China too. Do you know what England did to China or what Britain did to China after the Opium War? Africans cry like they're the only ones being oppressed in the world because they're not serious. Don't be shouting and crying all over the place. Your identity. Oh God. By the way, sorry guys, if we're out of the topic. I just don't like people having this low vibrational energy. See us, see what they have done to us. So. Your mates are all across the world defining their. You are here shouting, Britain did this to me. Don't worry. Enjoy your Britain and Biafra. And God bless you. You will not have Biafra in Jesus. And the reason is because lands belonging to other people and they call it Biafra. And fight for your identity. Don't force other people into some made-up identity in the name of unity. They don't want it because the reason you are doing it is because you want to steal from them. You know what they have you need, but you don't have the humility to actually ask them because you know they will say no. And I would say no if I were them, actually, because it's all you, nothing for anybody. Nothing for you. So nothing for you too. God bless you as you change your mind about Nigeria. It's been a nice run. Let's go home. Thank you very much for being part of today's session. Tomorrow, like I said, we're starting a new series. I'm looking at the books. They're smiling at me. I'm smiling at them too. By the way, we have not gone on camera this week. It's quite interesting. So we're changing some dynamics, some things, so that we can have more content. Okay. So, but tomorrow we're going to start a new series on Papa and his incarceration. Please invite others. Let's use the links, and also please watch the videos on our channels on platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. Instagram is misbehaving, but yeah, please just share and let's all learn together. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out on Telegram at Busui Oris, and let's all keep learning. May Nigeria work in our lifetime. May we have the proper structure that actually works, and may we be the solution we've been seeking. We are the ones we've been waiting for, you see. May God bless you, and may God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We're going to listen to the anthems, the Nigerian anthem and the Yoruba anthem, and then we will, see you again tomorrow at 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. I'm excited about tomorrow's session, actually. Very, very excited. All right. Here's the Nigerian anthem. Please sing along. If you don't know the lyrics, please learn the lyrics. Wait, 1 second. Udoka, are you not tired? I want to play anthem. Are you not tired? He's saying, who created your constitution that refused to add secession clause? Your parents. The modern world is technology, not resources. Which tech do you have? You don't even have tech to create Okpa. Which tech do you have there? I talk about tech. Okawabi Wasijari. All the, what's it called now? The major tech companies on the continent. Let's even leave Nigeria. Oh, let's even say Nigeria. Where are they? Who are the people leading the unicorns in this country? Where are they? You want to go at all? All right, let's get into the anthem. It's enough.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land, the tribe and tongue
Àwọn ìmọ́lẹ̀ ogun adúláwọ̀ ìmọ́lẹ̀ wo ni wọ́ọ̀kùn lágbára Ọlọ́run ilẹ̀ Yorùbá ò ní bàjẹ́ Nàìjíríà náà ò ní bàjẹ́ ilé wa ọ̀nà wa ò ní bàjẹ́ lágbára Ọlọ́run ohun tá a bá dáwọ́lé ló máa yọrí sí rere lágbára Ọlọ́run. Thank you very much for being part of today's session. And Udoka is just going on and on in the comment section on YouTube. He says, but the anthem was written by colonial masters. I don't know we had colonial masters. I know there were colonialists, but they are probably your own masters. And it's quite interesting you're typing in their language while criticism. So yeah. May God bless Nigeria, may God bless you, and may you experience supernatural help this season. May doors of opportunities open up to you, and may you do well in all that Jillian is upon. Thank you very much for being part of this session. I'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. If time was African time when we're starting the new series. And I'm sure we're going to have a great time together. Do have a lovely evening and see you tomorrow. Odaro.